Good evening. What is going on, everybody? Good to be back. It is Sunday now, and we were just live not too long ago, 3 a.m. this morning to be exact, or around 2 a.m. So it's good to be back here with all of you guys. Had a really good stream last night talking about the situation in the West Bank. I got a little bit passionate, so if you fell asleep and you didn't get the chance to see that, go ahead and check out the previous stream, kind of around the 3 or 4 hour mark. I start to go in on it and give some really good background to the situation regarding Osama bin Laden in the Middle East, as well as the fact that there's a video now. So you don't even have to watch the whole live stream. Shout out to my editor, Halimi. He actually uploaded a full video and broke it down, or really clipped it up and spliced it up for you guys so you can see the whole thing. Good to see everybody. Good to be with everybody. And shout out to Kane702 for joining the membership. I saw that, my friend. Thank you so much. Appreciate the love. But what's up? What's up? How's everybody's Sunday? I hope it's good. Mine was good. I spent the day with some friends. You know, I had some Chipotle today. Really hit the spot. I've been carb cutting, so it was good. I had some chips and guac. You can't go wrong with that. Although kava is better, I must admit. So it was a nice little Sunday for me. Gorgeous day in Connecticut. Absolutely gorgeous day. And we needed it. We earned it because yesterday was really just not the most desirable day, especially when we're breaking into May. It was really rainy and gross. I don't know where all of you guys are, but a lot of us, I think New Englanders and tri-state area people, got a beautiful day of gorgeous sunshine, and some relatively warm weather. However, it got a little bit chilly. I went for a walk. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw my Instagram post or my story post. I went for a good walk at my local beach / park. I don't know. And it was a good time. Shout out to my boy. He put me on. He said, yo, there's like a park around here. I said, really? Because I'm new to this specific area that I'm currently living in. And he's like, yo, you know there's a park around here. Like a nice park on the water, like on the beach. I'm like, really? So I went for a walk. That's kind of like a new hobby I've had. Just going for a walk, getting my mind rolling. I feel like I come up with my best thoughts when I'm walking and everything. So it was a really good time. But yeah, I came back, getting ready for the week. Of course, the work week. Tomorrow is the dreaded all-knowing Monday, right? Everybody knows it's the worst day of the week. But got a nice stream planned for you guys. We're going to go into all of the developments in regards to last night's White House correspondent shooting, the really attempted assassination of Trump cabinet members. That's what we now know. That was the initial target, or at least the presupposed plan from the manifesto that dropped today from Cole Allen, the guy who was the perpetrator, or the one who was trying to kill Donald Trump or JD Vance or high-ranking cabinet officials, excluding Kash Patel, oddly enough. And so why, I don't know. But I will say, as the story is developing, and everybody was telling me last night, Riyadh, you took the 7K. Why are you believing the mainstream story? All right, take it easy. I will say some things seem really weird on its face, you know. And so a lot of people have now speculated that the shooting was staged. Former CIA veteran Larry Johnson had actually said he's positive the shooting was staged, and we're going to react to his video and his statement right now. We'll get into all of that. And then we're also going to go over the situation in Iran. If you didn't know, Iran has now proposed, again, another stipulation or set of plans for what would actually bring them to the table. And so the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, had left Pakistan today. He was also in Oman, and now he's going to Moscow. So it seems like he's not able to cover any ground with the Pakistanis being the mediators or trying to broker the peace. Maybe there will be a new party that steps in to try and broker peace. I don't know if Pakistan's role is completely off of the table, but that's kind of where things seem to be drifting at this point due to the fact that the foreign minister has been in several different countries. And of course, in Oman, he's probably talking about the situation of the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, that is the 21-mile passageway between Iran and Oman. Previously, they shared control of the strait, Oman only owning about 20% historically, and the Strait of Hormuz belonging entirely or majorly for Iran, but now they control the entire strait, and that is a response to the U.S. blockade on their ports, blocking oil, goods, and everything else that will help bolster the economy during this volatile period where the country's at a full-scale war with Israel and the United States. So we'll get into everything. But, lots of theories, conspiracies, and I'm not actually detesting them. I think that a lot of them make sense. Look, this shooting has given Trump the biggest bragging right and really reason. Right now, he feels like he's earned the reason to say, well, this is why the ballroom needs to be built. Right. So if you didn't know, Donald Trump was trying to extend a portion of the White House and build this majestical, glorious ballroom that can be used for a White House Correspondents' Dinner or hosting different leaders, events like that. And, of course, use the argumentation or argue from the framework that the existing place that we use for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, that being the Hilton Hotel in Washington, is not secure. And obviously our evidence is Cole Allen running through security and getting past like 4 or 5 Secret Service members before being apprehended and, of course, arrested. So we're going to read an article, and then I'll show you a lot of this stuff that I have on X. But there's a picture of this guy previously in an IDF shirt, or a shirt that has an IDF branding logo on it. And look, his manifesto shows that the guy, his screws weren't straight. He really was a nut job. However, he wasn't dumb. I mean, the guy was an engineer. He was also a game developer. He was educated. He's half black, half white, 31 years old, I believe. And so he kind of has that same remnants or background, and it follows the pattern of a lot of these crazy nuts who attempt to assassinate high-ranking political officials or political commentators or reactionaries. And of course, he was not successful. And really, he didn't get close. He was apprehended in the lobby, or I think even outside of the lobby of where the dinner was taking place. And that's why a lot of people, including Donald Trump himself, didn't actually hear the gunshots initially when they went off because of how far it was. And if you weren't paying attention to the news, last night, somebody attempted to get into the Hilton Hotel where the White House Correspondents' Dinner was being held and assassinate ultimately Donald Trump, but other high-ranking officials in the Trump cabinet as well, J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, anybody else. And so it was certainly a poor attempt, but of course it's unsettling, and this is a pattern that we're no stranger to. This would be the 3rd or 4th official attempt on Donald Trump's life. You've got the situation in Pennsylvania where he was shot in the ear. You've got the situation on the golf course, and then you have the situation just recently in Mar-a-Lago where somebody breached a perimeter with, I believe, a shotgun before he was taken down or neutralized by Secret Service members. And now you have this nut job who is thankfully alive, so we can actually extract more evidence as to what his motives were, why he did what he did, so on and so forth. And so we'll get into all the details, but I will give credit to a lot of these alternate theories. It is weird, and the timing does seem to be advantageous for Donald Trump. Of course, his approval rating is as low as it's ever been, and that's because of the senseless war he started in Iran. And previously, he had the Epstein scandal taking the country by storm, and that was kind of the mainstream headline until the Iranian conflict took off. And of course, now he just had an interview today, and he was being questioned about the Epstein files. We'll react to that. Don't worry, we'll get into all of it. But maybe this will bolster some of the MAGA base to get behind Trump. Of course, there is that rally around the flag kind of effect when leaders of a country have assassination attempts foil. It kind of empowers the base that follows that leader. So we may see an effect similar to that maybe in the next few months. However, it's really not going to help this entire issue in the grand scheme of things. Trump has started a regional mess in the Middle East, that being the Iranian conflict. Several countries are involved. Several countries are at jeopardy. And the UAE and all of the Gulf countries paired along with them have suffered drastically from an economic standpoint because they can no longer export a majority of their oil through the Strait of Hormuz because, of course, it is blocked with threats from the Iranian military or the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And so now they're having to depend on other things, as well as the fact of pipelines being a threat for strikes if Donald Trump actually follows his empty threats. However, he can fulfill them twice of bombing power plants. And now that green lights the Gulf for their desalination plants, for their oil infrastructure to be targeted as well from the IRGC. So lots of mess going on. I know a lot of you may not have had a clear scope as to what happened last night, but yeah, that's really what happened. A crazy guy tried to run into the hotel. He didn't get far. He got caught. I believe he shot a Secret Service member right in his chest, but thankfully he had a bulletproof vest on, so he was fine. He was in stable condition. The bullet didn't penetrate. And in this guy's manifesto, He said that he actually used downgraded ammunition so that he wouldn't kill anybody except the high-ranking officials that he was targeting. And he has this like very apologetic tone, and it concerns me because, of course, the crazy progressives always try and side with these kinds of characters or personalities. You know, whether this was a planned shooting, it was an inside job, you still have to give weight or acknowledgement to what this will mean for people on the left, people on the right, how they'll perceive this. Because, of course, the mainstream narrative is going to take all of the credibility and run. And so people are going to look at this at face value. This was a crazy guy who ran in, tried to kill Trump. He was unsuccessful. But, of course, Luigi Mangione, the guy who killed the CEO of the healthcare company, I forget the name, I can't remember, somebody can remind me in the chat, you know, he was paraded and he was revered for his actions. And of course the guy is a complete lunatic nut job, went off and killed somebody for what he thought was a moral reason. And it's the same thing there. You know, we see parallels in both instances where both of these perpetrators or these shooters or these murderers, or at least attempted murderer, being Cole Allen, try and kill somebody for the greater good of morality and representation of what is right and what is wrong, good versus evil. I must stop this. I cannot be complicit as this is happening, kind of thing. And so we've seen that theme before. And this manifesto plays into that very much so. And so, of course, you'll see all of the girls on TikTok, right? Or all of the Gen Z base. By the way, that includes myself. I'm 24. You're going to see a lot of them going, well, he wasn't entirely wrong. Trump is evil and the Epstein files and everything else. And look, I concede to the fact at least that Donald Trump is definitely rather an evil person, right? I don't know if that's even controversial to say at this point. He obviously was closely involved with Epstein. There have been so many real scandals that have come out of the MAGA base. I mean, look at all the things that have headlined just in the last 6 months. You've got the insider trading. A military general was just arrested for predicting that Maduro would be captured on Polymarket, and he was apprehended and arrested by the FBI. So Kash Patel cracked that down. And that was because Polymarket, I believe, gave them a tip that his bets and the manner in which he placed them were very sus, as well as the fact that he created an account and then started betting large sums of money into an unlikely reality, right? So there's that. You've got the attorney general being fired or allegedly stepping down into a better position, right? Pam Bondi. You've got the situation of course, the Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, that whole situation, him and Donald Trump's relationship. And then, of course, Tulsi Gabbard may step down. Joe Kent has stepped down, the chief for the National Counterterrorism Center. And now Trump started a war with Iran. So, you know, his approval rating is in the toilet, obviously. And you've got the ignorant MAGA base, the, you know, Trumpers that will never cease to support Trump. And it's kind of a fleeting gain. It's a lost cause, but, you know, we pity those people and we hope that they'll come to the truth and their eyes will find the light. But yeah, that's kind of the whole deal here. And so maybe this will kind of aid Trump's image. Of course it won't. And he is likely to lose a lot of his support, especially in November. A lot of the seats in the House will turn over to be blue or Democrat. And then MAGA for the next 2 years will struggle to actually implement or effectuate any legislation that is in favor of Donald Trump or, you know, has a Republican tone to it. And that's where the wind is drifting. And I don't think that this little assassination attempt is really going to put a fork in any of it. I think that it's already over for the MAGA base. I think that midterms are likely decided at this point, unless we see a very sharp 180 in the next 4 or 5 months before we step into the fall, which just likely won't happen because we have started a forever war effectively with Iran. And so hopefully, right, with some of these developments we're seeing, Trump has not resumed military action against Iran. And it's been a while since we've actually deployed military action or an air campaign against Iran. If you don't remember, obviously, J.D. Vance and the Middle Eastern envoy, being Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner, had went to Iran in early April, and they tried to broker a peace deal. Of course, they failed in the attempt to reach peace, but the ceasefire persisted until April 22nd. That's what Donald Trump had said he will extend it. April 22nd came. Iran never came to the table for negotiations, even though it seemed like we were a little bit more desperate for that. And then yesterday, Donald Trump says, well, I've canceled all peace talks. No, they canceled the peace talks. They weren't showing up. And that's because Mojtaba Khamenei and other Iranian officials said, we're not going to come to the table because we know agreement is going to be had. No agreement will be had until you release the blockade on our ports. So Trump is trying to make it seem like he has control of the situation when in reality he really doesn't. And he is unfortunately kind of at mercy of the IRGC. And so he has two options. He can either nuke Iran, right? Or he can launch another military invasion. Maybe boots on ground will be an element here, as we predicted prior. And that seemed to be the case when that F-15 jet was shot down. And it seemed like this whole CIA operation to seize uranium and open the door for a ground invasion, that failed because of course, that jet was shot down and the Wizzo was stranded on a mountain before we rescued him. And so it's been a shit show. The United States is really struggling to actually reach any of its goals in the region. I've been saying that since day one. I've been saying that before the conflict had started, and all of my predictions actually did come true. So it's not that I'm some prophet. It's not that my brother is some prophet or anything like that. It's just that we're being honest. And when you're honest, you tend to be right a little bit more often than less. So that's the situation. We'll read Al Jazeera. I have an article pulled up from Al Jazeera as well, and it goes over the foreign minister's actions in the last 48 hours. And of course, I'll go into the speculation as to what I see happening with Iran. Also, the UAE has been secretly running military supply flights into Israel since the war begun. And that's the whole thing here. There is this shadow axis with the UAE and Israel. And that's why they've been the main target of Iranian strikes, from the ballistic missiles program, the mid-range missiles program that poses no threat to us, only Israel and the rest of the Middle East. So, you know, they're going to be subject to more and more retaliatory strikes if we continue military action against Iran. And I think that's why Donald Trump is really hesitating, because he knows if I keep going hard on Iran, if I keep on my air campaign, which has been successful, right? We've destroyed tons of infrastructure. Well, then they're just going to keep bombing these Gulf countries. And how long can Trump bear that? And how long is it until these Gulf countries say, what the hell, I'm no longer going to strategically ally myself with the United States for military support if they can't even offer me that? And they're leveraging the petrodollar so hard. So, you know, there's been some talks and ideas floating around from the Wall Street Journal that UAE officials had flirted with the idea of trading in yuan, which is Chinese currency. So oil is back up to what I believe is 106 now. It was hovering around 90 for 2 days, and that's only because Trump was lying, saying that a deal was about to be met. And this is what he does. He manipulates the markets with his lies on Truth Social and so on. And so all of the Trump MAGA guys were going, well, it's all over. Look at you, were panicking. Were we? Because last time I checked, the Strait of Hormuz is under Iranian control, and the IRGC is making lots of money. And, you know, it's been about 2 weeks now since we've imposed a blockade on their ports. They've been losing allegedly $500 million a day, according to Donald Trump. Doesn't seem like they're really struggling to hang on. So it's a matter of who can hang on to this thinning rope longer. And it seems like Iran is actually keeping up quite well. So that's not favorable for me to say. I wish the U.S. would implement a strategy to force them to come to the table and concede to some of our demands, but that's not going to be the case. And in this new, 5-10 point plan proposal, we're going to read it in a moment. One of the stipulations is we'll talk about everything except the nuclear situation. And so they're not even going to come to the table if it has anything to do with the uranium at this point. That's where their statements are leaning. And that was the whole reason or pretext that we started this war on. They've got to get rid of the uranium. They've got to slow down their enrichment. They're racing towards a bomb. And of course, the United States and certain think tanks funded by certain people, you can kind of connect that yourself, have been proposing or perpetuating this idea that Iran is 1 week away from a bomb. They are 1 month away from a nuke. They are a week away from chemical weapons. Mark Levin, Stephen Witkoff, and all these other people are saying the same exact things. And they've been saying this since the 90s. This has been the MO since the 90s. This has been the narrative. If you're older and you've been paying attention, you know this is true. It's always Iran is 1 second away from a bomb. Iran is trying to bomb the United States. Iran is trying to nuke the world. And that statement has always fell flat on its face because they never actually were trying to create a bomb. They were only hedging one to protect their own sovereignty. And that's a political strategy that they had the right of exercising. And they only ever increased the enrichment of uranium because Israeli and U.S. aggression increased against them. So we have kind of exacerbated the issue that we're claiming to try and diffuse. And that's the false pretext that this war started on. Of course, the real reason for this war is because Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want the Iranian proxies next door. And he does not want the ballistic missiles program to exist anymore, which destroyed Israel in the 12-day war. Not entirely, but dealt a ton of damage that I don't think they saw coming to that degree. And so he knows this missiles program can no longer evolve. We've got to nip it in the bud now before this gets worse and we can never defeat Iran. Because ultimately they do want regime change. Of course, it's a power for influence. It's a power for borders. One that Israel has been fighting against southern Lebanon, against the West Bank, and of course, Iran. And they've successfully fought against many of their foes in the region. They've removed all the leaders. So Bashar al-Assad, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, all of these guys are gone because of Israel. And that's the true red pill there. Could I go into how that all happened? Of course I could, but we'd be here for 6 years and I got to get into the current events. So let's take a look at what's going on. I believe Myron is sleeping. So a lot of you guys may be looking for Myron. Yes, Myron is my brother. I think if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. We cover current events. We go over everything really. I just riff sometimes. Sometimes we talk about women. Sometimes we talk about current events. Sometimes we talk about what's to come, what has happened in the past, a little history and education, whatever really the situation calls for or what is relevant to what I'm talking about. So we go over all of it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Liked the video. And shout out to all you guys. He's either sleeping or he just wasn't going to go on today, but I know he planned on it. So he is likely sleeping. And, you know, the guy's a workhorse. My brother, when we went live together yesterday covering the breaking news of the White House Correspondents' Dinner situation, he was up for already 24 hours at that point. So I think he's just catching up on sleep now. And so hopefully I can fill the void and be the substitute teacher, if you will, for the next 2 hours. I'll probably only be live until, maybe 11 p.m. or so. My goodness. I don't want to be live for too long because I do have work in the morning. And on top of that, I want to make sure I'm concise with the news. You know, I've been rambling a lot these last few streams. However, you guys seem to enjoy it, but, you know, I want to make sure that I'm actually covering what's relevant and what matters. So let's take a look. I guess we can read, for those of you who have not been paying attention to the news at all, I'll just read this article. It breaks down what happened yesterday and then the developments all the way up until about 30 minutes ago. And this is from NBC News. So we will give this a good read. I suppose I'll share the screen if you guys want to read, but if you're listening in, you're good. So here, this is titled Suspect in White House Correspondents' Dinner Shooting Wrote of Targeting Trump Administration. So it's probably going to get into the manifesto and everything like that. So the California teacher and engineer accused of opening fire outside the White House Correspondents Association dinner believed it was his duty to target Trump administration officials, according to a note he sent family members about 10 minutes before the Saturday attack. Cole Thomas Allen, 31, who lives in Los Angeles suburb of Torrance, is the armed suspect federal authorities subdued near the packed ballroom at the Washington Hilton, where President Donald Trump and other White House officials gathered with journalists, a federal official familiar with the case told NBC News. Allen was armed with a shotgun, handgun, and knives when he rushed a security checkpoint and ran towards the ballroom, where the black tie dinner was being held, authorities said. He exchanged gunfire with law enforcement and was tackled to the ground. And that's where you can hear the 4 or 5 shots in that video, which we'll play in a moment if you didn't get a chance to catch last night. Just moments before the attack, Allen sent family members a note apologizing to his parents, colleagues, students, bystanders, and others for what he was about to do, according to a transcript of some of Allen's writings provided to NBC News by a senior administration official. And this is the picture here of him on the ground, which Trump actually posted to his Truth Social. Like, so unprofessional, but of course in Trump fashion. Quote, "I don't expect forgiveness," end quote, Allen wrote. "Again, my sincere apologies," he wrote. In the note, Allen criticized Trump without mentioning him by name. He wrote about lax security at the hotel, saying he had expected more. He also described his, quote, "expected rules of engagement," end quote, writing, "administration officials, not including Mr. Patel, they are targets prioritized from highest ranking to lowest," end quote. He appeared to be referring to FBI Director Kash Patel, yet obviously. Later he added, "I experienced rage thinking about everything this administration has done." The senior administration official that Allen's brother contacted the New London Police Department in Connecticut when he received the note. And that's not too far from where I currently am. The department confirmed being contacted at around 10:49 p.m. Saturday, just over 2 hours after the shooting, by an individual who expressed concern about the incident that occurred at the White House Correspondents Association dinner earlier in the evening. Police contacted federal law enforcement and the caller was interviewed by authorities. Allen's sister told the Secret Service and Montgomery County Police after the shooting that her brother had a tendency to make radical statements and he had referred a plan to do something to fix the issue with today's world, or the issues, the senior administration official said. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, the one who replaced the former one, Pam Bondi, told NBC News earlier Sunday that law enforcement authorities believe he took a train from LA to Washington, D.C. Blanche said on Meet the Press that authorities believe the suspect traveled by train from LA to Chicago, then Chicago to Washington, D.C., where he checked into the hotel where the correspondence dinner was at in the last day or two. So this guy, and I guess we can read a little bit more. This is a little bit more intimate information about him. And then I'll read his manifesto in a moment. Don't worry, we'll get to that. And that's going to be very interesting. The suspect, who was not shot but was taken to local hospital, is expected to be charged in federal court on Monday. In a press conference shortly after the attack, Trump called the suspected shooter a whack job and a lone wolf. Public records and interviews show that Allen was a trained engineer who once interned for NASA and participated in the Nerf Club and Christian Fellowship at his prestigious Californian university. Before more recently developing video games and working as a part-time teacher, Allen attended Pacific Lutheran High School in Gardena, California, where he was known for his inquisitiveness and intellect, a former volleyball teammate told NBC News. While he had not seen Allen recently, he remembered Allen as a borderline genius and super stable. Yeah, the first part, sure. Second part, I don't know. Other people study hard, said the ex-teammate, who spoke on the condition of anonymity out of fear it could affect his career. He didn't have to study. It would just come to him. He was really, really smart. The former teammate said Allen was interested in coding and computers, but he was also a very good writer and seemed to be well-versed in several subjects. Across the board, he was really knowledgeable, really curious, the ex-teammate said. The teammate said they lost touch with Allen once he went off to the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech, a private research university in Pasadena, California, but expressed surprise that he would be the suspect in Saturday's attack. Quote, he was probably the most gentle person on the team, which makes it even more shocking that he did this, the ex-teammate said. According to his LinkedIn profile, Allen graduated from the California Institute of Technology, commonly known as Caltech, in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. The school confirmed it had a record of a student named Cole Allen who graduated in 2017. While he was a Caltech student, Allen was a member of the winning group of the 31st Annual Mechanical Engineering 72 Design Competition, which involved building robots that could play soccer. So, this goes on and on about the guy, but nothing else in here is really that important. So I suppose the only appropriate place to go here is his manifesto after reading that article. So let's go ahead and take a read. And, this is the common story with these people, which is why I know people are so sussed out like this is an inside job. And I honestly can't blame them. And we'll get into all of the alternate theories, or really the main alternative theory that comes from no other than Larry Johnson, former CIA veteran. So let's read this here. So this reads, this is the first page. So this is Cole Allen's manifesto before, of course, entering the hotel and attempting to kill either the president or high-ranking cabinet officials. So he goes, hello, everybody. So I may have given a lot of people a surprise today. Let me start off by apologizing to everyone whose trust I abused. I apologize to my parents for saying I had an interview without specifying it was for Most Wanted. I apologize to my colleagues and students for saying I had a personal emergency. By the time anyone reads this, I probably most certainly do need to go to the ER, but can hardly call that not a self-inflicted status. I apologize to all of the people I traveled next to, all the workers who handled my luggage, and all of the other non-targeted people at the hotel who I put in danger simply by being near. I apologize to everyone who was abused and/or murdered before this, to all those who suffered before I was able to attempt this, to all who may still suffer after, regardless of my success or failure. I don't expect forgiveness, but if I could have seen any other way to get this close, I would have taken it. Again, I think he meant to say I wouldn't, okay, I would have taken it. I understand now. Again, my sincere apologies. On to why I did any of this. So this is his reasoning here, or his motivation. I am a citizen of the United States of America. What my representatives do reflects on me, and I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. Well, to be completely honest, I was no longer willing to a long time ago, but this is the first real opportunity I've had to do something about it. This continues on to the next page. While I'm discussing this, I'll also go over my expected rules of engagement, probably in a terrible format, but I'm not military, so not so bad. Okay. So this reads, admin officials, not including Mr. Patel, they are targets, prioritized from highest ranking to lowest. Obviously, Trump is going to be at the very top of that. Secret Service, they are targets only if necessary and to be incapacitated, non-lethally if possible. AKA, I hope they're wearing body armor because center mass with shotguns messes up people who are not. Hotel security, not targets at all if possible, unless they shoot at me. Capitol Police, same as hotel security. National Guard, same as hotel security. Hotel employees, not targets at all. Guests, not targets at all. In order to minimize casualties, I will also be using buckshot rather than slugs, less penetration through walls, he adds. I would still go through most everyone here to get the targets if it were absolutely necessary, on the basis that most people chose to attend a speech by a pedo, rapist, and traitor, and thus are complicit, but I really hope it does not come to that. Okay, so that's the end of that. And then he does this like long-winded thing of objections in his rebuttals, and I'm really not excited to read through this. This guy is a complete nut job, so I suppose it adds a little bit more context. So, rebuttals to objections. Now, this is interesting, and he shows his faith here. As a Christian, you should turn the other cheek. Rebuttal. Turning the other cheek is for when you yourself are oppressed. I am not the person raped in detention camp. I am not the fisherman executed without trial. I am not school kid blown up or child starved or teenage girl abused by the many criminals in this administration. Turning the other cheek when someone else is oppressed is not Christian behavior. It is complicity in the oppressor's crimes. Objection 2. This is not a convenient time for you to do this. His rebuttal. I need whoever thinks this way to take a couple minutes and realize that the world is not about them. Do you think that when I see someone being raped or murdered or abused, I should walk on by because it would be inconvenient for the people who aren't victims? This was the best timing and chance of success I could come up with. Objection 3. You didn't get them all. Rebuttal. Got to start somewhere. Objection 4. As a half black, half white person, you shouldn't be the one doing this. Rebuttal. I don't see anyone else picking up the slack. This guy is really a nutcase. This one's crazy. Objection 5. Yield unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Rebuttal. The United States of America are ruled by the law, not by any one or several people. Insofar as representatives and judges do not follow the law, no one is required to yield them anything so unlawfully ordered. I would also like to extend my appreciation to a great many people, since I will not be likely to be able to talk with them again unless the Secret Service is astoundingly incompetent. Thank you to my family, both personal and church, for your love over these 31 years. Thank you to my friends for your companionship over many years. Thank you to my colleagues over many jobs for your positivity and professionalism. Thank you to my students for your enthusiasm and love of learning. Thank you to the many acquaintances I've met in person and online for short interactions and long-term relationships, for your perspectives and inspiration. Thank you all for everything. Sincerely, Cole, quote, Cold Force, friendly federal assassin, Allen. Yeah, this guy was off his rocker. No doubt about that. And so, what do we know from reading this? Okay, and this is what I was saying in the beginning when I started the stream before we read through this whack job manifesto. And I mean, what manifesto really doesn't come from a whack job? Like, obviously, the guy is intelligent. And that's the pattern you see with these people who target high-ranking political officials or the president as a whole. They're always like these intelligent, kind of what seems to be outcasted, disheveled people. But I mean, from what the statements are reading on NBC and the people who were actually close to him, they said that he seemed stable. He was a high achiever. He was very smart. But this is what happens when people develop this ideology that they need to take matters into their own hands. And the first answer is, of course, always violence. And that's just never the first answer if you are actually sensible. The first answer is, of course, maybe a revolution, changing the way people think, getting a voice, gaining a platform, doing something for the cause, which is what activism is in and of itself, right? That's what activism is. And activism is the step that should be exercised before violence ever comes to the table. And that seems like something that a lot of these guys either skip over or try and fail at, and so they resort to this violence. And unfortunately, this is a disease of the left. This is a disease of people who are progressive. And of course, progressives are trying to move the mark. Conservatives are obviously trying to conserve right? They're trying to keep traditionalism alive, what they know to be the quote unquote American way of life. And so for progressives to actually effectuate change, sometimes that means progressing to violence or resorting to violence if that means moving the needle. And this is the ongoing theme, unfortunately. Now, a lot of things that this guy wrote were, of course, concerning, but the biggest theme or real tone that he comes off with in the beginning of this long-winded manifesto, I think about 1,050 words, is that he starts off with sincere apologies. He apologizes to everybody who may be affected indirectly, anybody that he may hurt unintentionally in the process. He says that he does not want to hurt anybody that has nothing to do with Donald Trump's cabinet, somehow excluding Kash Patel. And so he is trying to kind of, and I don't know if this is the intention, but what this does is it wins the hearts of these crazy, bleeding heart liberals and all of these younger girls, really, because it's females primarily that will jump on this guy and somehow support him. Even if it's vague, they will vaguely support him. And of course, this guy is playing the good versus evil battle. Look, Donald Trump is not innocent. And I will tell you that right now. Donald Trump is likely a criminal that should be prosecuted for his crimes. His involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, him starting wars without congressional approval, him doing several things like the ballroom without any sort of approval from judges or congressional approval. I mean, and look, I am kind of for the move the mark or move the needle and make something happen kind of authoritarian style of presidential leadership. Sometimes it's needed, and so to have it in doses can be refreshing. But of course, Trump has gone too far, and he's definitely beyond the pale with the war that we're currently seeing in Iran. But this is always never the answer. Violence is never the answer. And I know that's what we hear growing up, and that's the redundant statement, and it's like, oh yeah, we get it, but it's just true. And this is what the left resorts to. And whether you're on the right or you're on the left and you're watching this, regardless, that's never the answer. Unfortunately, the theme seems to fall more consistently on the opposing side of the political aisle, but that is just never the answer. But again, with this apologetic tone, he will likely win the approval of a lot of the young base, of a lot of the young girls in New York City and other cities like that, right? The Zohran Mamdaners. These are the girls and young men even who are very progressive and liberal who will say, look, the guy was wrong to try and kill people, but can you really blame him? And it's like, no, we can't straddle the line here. This is full on wrong, and this guy's a nutcase. And you're not always going to agree with whoever's running the country, but that doesn't mean you have to go and try and take their life, even if they're doing things that are damaging to our country. Look, we do, and I don't want to do the whole like political trope. We do live in a democracy. You got to vote, and you got to influence people to vote in the way that you find to be congruent or parallel with your worldview. And so that's why activism is actually a much better step to exercise versus being full on violent. And I don't even know if this guy was an activist. We have not gained all the information on him yet. But from what I'm seeing, he seemed just like a normal engineer, game developing, former teacher who was very disheveled at the Epstein files. Of course, he keeps referring to Trump as a traitor, as a rapist, as a pedophile, all these different things, all these vulgar terms. And so obviously he's upset about the files, and so are all of we. Or he's upset about the Iranian conflict as well, calling him a traitor. I don't know. Likely the files. But yeah, I mean, that's his manifesto. And this is the same thing with Luigi Mangione. These crazy, young, progressive, left-leaning, typically Gen X millennial or Gen Zers who try and take matters into their own hands and either succeed or fail at it. And they earn the approval or, the fans of the young left-leaning voting base. So it is what it is. Thankfully, the guy was caught alive, so we can actually extract his motivations. But I will say, there are some weird things that we see here. And I gotta be fair, okay? In Israel, 12 hours before he attempted this guy's name was Googled several times. And this, I checked it myself. I saw 100, but then again, the time zone likely matches up with the time zone here. This is what I'm seeing. So take a look. A little weird. Okay, it is a little weird. Past 24 hours. So this says right here, 6:56 a.m., whatever. People are saying time zones, you inbred retard. But, there are some weird consistencies. One of the things that I will say that kind of struck me as odd is what Larry Johnson had stated in this video, and I'll go ahead and play it for you guys. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, Riyadh, what do you think? It's just unclear. You know, of course it can always be an inside job. Why the fuck would you trust the government? But at the same time, is it really that radical or unlikely for a crazy guy to try and run into a hotel and kill the president of the United States at a time where he's highly unpopular because he seems to be a pedophile? I mean, it's just not that far reaching of a theory. So, you know, people always go, you don't conspiracize enough, you don't go into these theories enough. And it's like, yeah, I don't, because when things actually become clear, and that's what happens over time, you lose credibility very quickly. So you have to be very careful with that kind of stuff. And I'll just be honest, if you guys are here to watch somebody put the tinfoil hat on and conspiracize, you're probably in the wrong place. I'm not going to do that. I will entertain the likelihood of these theories that come about, but I'm not about to go full schizo mode and give you guys complete slop. That's not what I believe in. That's not what I believe journalism is. That's not what I believe news coverage is. And so there has to be a balance, semblance of balance. However, you know, you can argue, you know, this was a distraction from the current conflict in the Middle East. However, that's been dying down. This was to increase Trump's approval ratings. I mean, none of that's really going to work, though. You know, none of that is actually going to work. Maybe it was a poor attempt by the president, you know, but bullets were exchanged, you know. But, of course, people are going to say it was choreographed, whatever. I want to be gracious to all theories that actually serve some sort of weight. But this was law enforcement at his house. Okay, I think he actually lived in an apartment, but this was where he lived in Torrance. And this was shortly after the shooting in Washington. Obviously, in California, they were 3 hours behind, so this was probably somewhere around, I don't know, 8 p.m. Pacific time. All right, what's with the music here? Holy dramatic. But yeah, you could see tons of journalists, lots of news stations, press jumping on it. And this is, and I don't know if this is AI, we're just having a little bit of a tinfoil hat moment here. But I saw this surfacing all over Twitter. Allegedly, he had an IDF shirt on. I mean, if that's true, a little weird. And that doesn't line up because the guy's a bleeding heart liberal. And typically people with his worldview or his scope of the world, the way he's writing this letter and the way he kind of formatted that manifesto, he would certainly be against the occupation in Palestine. You know, so to wear an IDF shirt just really is weird. It doesn't add up to me. But who knows? Who knows? And then this is what Larry Johnson had to say. I thought this was worth giving a listen to. But let's take a listen. Let's see, you know, if this was staged or not. Oh, I got some chat, so I'll read these before we get into it. Okay, Kane, shout out to you again. Smokey Marjaya says, why is Myron on Somalian time? I don't know. He's sleeping, man. He doesn't get much rest. YV Lit, sup, Riyadh, do you believe it was like MK Ultra? Was the IDF pick real? LOL. I don't know. I didn't really verify if it was. And that's the problem. You know, with AI, things can really, really fool you. And so you've got to be so careful, and you've got to take everything you see with a grain of salt. I think it's real because some credible people were posting it, but I don't know. You know, I don't know. Jair says his letter lasted longer than him executing it. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. MB34012 says, oh, it was a weirdo, or maybe it was staged move to get Trump's base to rally around him at a time when his approval rating is at an all-time low. Yeah, and there's some credibility to that. I said this yesterday. I said the two things that Trump can weaponize from this incident is, we need a ballroom because the hotel is not secure. That's one thing he can say, and he'll also use this against the left when they start to whoop his ass in the midterms, you know? He can say that the left is comprised of crazy killer assassins who just resort to violence. They're brutalists. They're whack jobs. Maybe that's something that he'll start to carry on because, of course, Trump is a bragger. He loves to brag. He loves to self-aggrandize. So maybe he'll be like, you know, they try to kill me. And well, he's already said this actually in the White House press briefing last night. And maybe we'll play a little bit of that if you guys missed it. But I reacted to it live last night. You know, he's saying that, you know, it happened to me several times. I'm not frightened. You know, and this is what comes with the job. This is the most dangerous job ever, being the president of the United States. So for him, this empowers him, you know. And to his credit, you know, the situation in Pennsylvania was unsettling. He was hit in the ear. So, and I know people are going to put on the tinfoil hat for that, but I'm saying just for the pure idea or for the pure fact of bragging, well, he has those rights now. So does he want to add to that laundry list? You know, it's all speculation. Sogno Sprite says, Can you please check out the book Chaos, Charles Manson? Okay. I'll sit on that. Thank you. All right. So let's see what Larry Johnson had to say about the whole situation. And guys, if you're enjoying the stream, please like the video. It helps me out a ton. You know, this political content is sometimes a little bit divisive on this platform. So the likes go a very long way. God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
The story stinks to high heaven. Let me explain some of the issues. And let me emphasize, this is not just my opinion. I've got a buddy who ran Reagan's security detail after Reagan was shot. Experienced Secret Service officer. He actually set up the training protocols that Secret Service is supposed to adhere to, which they are no longer following. Now, let me emphasize that. So the first thing that caught my eye, the first person that's taken off the stage. So you got gunfire outside of the ball.
It was J.D. Vance, and I'll go ahead and pull up that clip for you guys right now.
Ballroom. It's not inside the ballroom. The first person to be taken off stage was J.D. Vance. And I look at it and go, what in God's name is going on?
You know, and this is what I'm saying. Here's the video if you didn't see it. They absolutely yoked him off the stage, by the way. I mean, like a Secret Service member is absolutely yoking him to death, pulling him off the stage, which of course is correct protocol, right? That's the right response. But Donald Trump is still on the stage here. And, you know, you can conspiracize about it, and that's what Larry is doing. He's giving his take on it, and so we'll give it a listen. I don't mean to interject too much, but this is also just like Secret Service kind of sucks sometimes. You know, the shooter on the roof. And so that's why people go, is this a setup? Because how can you be that slow or lousy in your response to 5 gunshots going off not too far away from the sitting president of the United States and a majority of his cabinet? You know, and if you didn't see the response, it was pretty lackluster. It was not as fast as I would have thought it should be for a Secret Service response. All right. So they get him off the stage, and Trump is still here. You'll see it in a moment. Armed guards rushing the stage, trying to secure the scene, and here's Donald Trump being rushed off. So J.D. Vance cleared Trump's evacuation by about 13 seconds. And that is a long time in a dangerous situation like this one. Okay, so that's that. Just so you guys have some context as to what Larry's talking about.
The protocol, the standard, the requirement is the president. Get the president. Everybody else can die. The president, that's who you save. That's what Secret Service is supposed to be trained to do. They didn't do that. They take off J.D. Vance. So you're going, okay, what's going on? Trump initially, you know, everybody else is ducking behind tables. He's sitting there calmly looking around like, did he know this was going to happen? Was this staged? I believe it was staged.
So breaking news very quickly, and we're going to get into the situation in a moment, so don't worry, I'm not going to pull away from this. But Trump plans a meeting with national security and foreign policy team on Monday, which is tomorrow, of course. The meeting is to discuss the stalemate in negotiations with Iran and potential options for the next steps in war. That's from Axios Barak Ravid. And so it looks like Trump has a response to Iran's proposal that they're not going to talk about nuclear, as well as them just not actually coming to the table at all. And that's, of course, in response to us blocking their ports. That's what the parliament speaker said today. Or, sorry, not today, last week. And he actually released a statement today. We'll get into all of that. But that's just some breaking news that dropped while we were on stream.
And we'll get into that. The second thing is the failure of the security perimeter, that it was not properly set up. So the way this should be done is you have a perimeter outside the hotel, okay? So you set the first layer, that nobody gets past that first layer unless they have a right to be in that hotel. They can show that they're a guest or that they got an invitation. Otherwise, nobody gets in.
Yeah, so I don't think that's the whole clip. But, I mean, front-facingly, you can see how that's a little weird, right? So certainly something to be spoken about. Another thing that really was unsettling or kind of struck me as weird, and look, this is where the tinfoil hats cannot be argued with. What the fuck is this? Take a listen.
I want to.
So this is the husband, I believe. Or no, this is Aisha Hasni talking about her conversation with Caroline Levitt's husband. I believe that's the context. I mean, just regardless, she's obviously about to give some crucial details that helps us piece together a better story as to what happened. And Fox News just completely like cuts off the phone call. So listen to this.
Quickly tell you, I was sitting next to Caroline Levitt, the press secretary's husband. He was one of our guests. He was seated right next to me, and right as the dinner was starting, the national anthem happened, and then he kind of leaned over and said, I watched you on TV. You do a great job. You need to be very safe. And he was very serious when he said that to me. And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some.
Bro, the timing is a little bit too good right there. All right. I'm sorry. She was about to drop the bomb, I think. So that was a little weird. Okay, I ain't gonna lie. That was a little odd. But listen again. Like, she was about to drop a bombshell there. Am I crazy, chat? That's a little odd. Here, listen again.
He was very serious when he said that to me. And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some.
What the fuck?
Sounds like we lost Aisha's phone there. And this happens, by the way, especially when you have so many people attempting to utilize the same cell service at the same time. I did want to add this. While we had a moment, I was just reading.
So completely diverts from the topic and says, looks like we lost service. By the way, that happens all the time. A little weird. So, a little weird. He said, you need to be very safe. He was very serious when he said that to me. He kind of looked around the room and said, there are some cuts off, call drops. A little weird, okay? I don't mean to be schizo, but a little, I wasn't too sure about that. I thought that was odd, so this guy was also present on social media and made some comments about certain individuals. So Cole Allen didn't radicalize in the dark corners of the internet. He believed what the mainstream told him. After 2024, he accepted the dominant Democratic narrative a fascist convicted felon had taken the White House. He shared Bill Kristol's warning that the Trumpist authoritarian project of personalized, concentrated, and arbitrary power is proceeding. And then this is some proof of his statements. This is him right here, Cold Force. And this is actually what he refers to himself as in the letter or the manifesto. Cold Force, Federal Assassination Allen, I think is what he referred to himself as. And then he retweets Bill Kristol's statement. Do not believe reassurance from Trump allies. The Trumpist authoritarian project of personalized, concentrated, and arbitrary power is proceeding apace. The reassurances are for suckers. So again, no doubt on where this guy stood when it came to politics or his political stance as a whole. So really weird. But that's kind of like everything that's come out about him, And again, if you really were under a rock yesterday. Okay, so this is another thing. I suppose I will show you guys this as well. So we'll read this. And this was surfacing all over X. There's some really weird stuff going on with the staged shooting. The shooter's name is Cole Allen. He uploaded a photo wearing an IDF's t-shirt to Instagram prior to the shooting, and Google searches for his name trended in Israel prior to the shooting. Now it gets even weirder. A man by the name of Henry Martinez made a single post on X in 2023 that read Cole Allen. Here it is right here. Okay, Henry Martinez, 2023, Cole Allen. He tweets that, okay? That screenshot was surfacing everywhere. And it looks like they knew each other as both Cole Allen and Henry Martinez interned at NASA's Jet Propulsion laboratory in 2014. There is no logical way to explain how Henry Martinez would know all the way back in 2023 that Cole Allen would go to do this in 2026 unless time travel is real. And this is Henry's way of hinting to us that it is real. You could argue the other way. And this is where we really get, into kook territory. But I'm just feeding the conspiracy theorists what they want to see as well. You could argue the other way to explain it is the shooting was being planned all the way back in 2023, but that was before President Trump had won the second term. And as crazy as it sounds, seems even more far-fetched than time travel. So again, I'm just showing you guys what is surfacing here. That's a little crazy to me. Sorry, a little crazy to me, okay? But, yeah. So, anything else really in regards to this besides some videos that hopefully you guys got to see yesterday on last night's stream? But this is another video of him being subdued inside the hotel.
Just open the door! Just open the door! Open the door!
And there he is right there on the ground. So there's that. And then I'll show you guys the original video because I know a lot of you didn't see it last night, or maybe many of you didn't get a chance to see it. So let's pull that up. And I'm going to read chats in a moment. I think I got a couple more. Oh, I just got one, so I'll read that in a second. But this was the main angle that had first surfaced once it happened. So take a look. So the shots go off. However, on this angle, you can't actually hear them. So you can see Secret Service officials are rushing the president's location. Melania knows what's going on. Okay. She's like, I've heard that noise before, and that is not a good noise. Trump's old ass is just smiling. Everything is fine and dandy. He's got no idea what the hell is... He doesn't know what the hell is happening. Until he sees the agents rush his position, and then and only then does he realize, oh, wait, something's wrong. My life is at threat here. And so they rush, and they already got J.D. Vance off. And now they tell the president to get down, and they rush him off stage. So that's in case you missed it yesterday. Yo, and if I'm not mistaken, one of these guys continues to eat as this is going on. Let me see if I can find it here. Let me scrub this. So obviously, panic settles in, right? Everybody in the room gets down per command of the Secret Service and Capitol Police, whoever else is there. This nigga's just absolutely chilling, not worried about a thing. He's seen worse days. I think it was him who, like, just keeps picking at his food. You know, I'll pull that clip up for you guys because I thought that was really funny. Nice light of humor in a serious moment. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah. So, look at this. I guess it was in that video. I just couldn't catch it. Everybody's down, worried about getting their head absolutely blown the fuck off, worried about their brain matter being exploded onto the table. And this guy is just, you know, I'm going to pick at this salad because I'm still hungry. There he goes. So, there's that. Bro's just absolutely chilling. Got to be a veteran or something. You know, because stuff like that is scary, and hopefully none of you have ever experienced something similar to that in person, but, you know, you hear shots go off, everybody panics. That's terrifying, especially with the world we live in. We kind of know what the next thing follows is, or the next thing to follow is after that. So, let's see. A lot of breaking news is actually coming out of Axios right now. But again, same report, Iran has given the U.S. a new negotiation proposal with plans to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, end the war for a long-term ceasefire or permanent, and postpone nuclear negotiations until later when the strait is open, only under the condition that the U.S. blockade is lifted. This is what I've been saying. So we'll break that down in a moment. But let me read some chats here, and then we'll segue into the Iranian conflict. There's really nothing else here that I thought was worth mentioning. So let's see. Sagno Sprite says, can you react to the clip of Jokic running up on McDaniels from yesterday's game? Sure. Let's see. It's NBA stuff. Let's see if I can get a video here. And Thodic, thank you so much for the 20. Thank you. Shout out to you. Appreciate the constant support. God bless, bro. Really appreciate it. Okay, so this is it here. Okay. Let's see what happened. It's just what is this? Just another NBA fight? Oops.
And there's the final rebound. An inspiring.
Let me just skip to where it happens because this copyright thing on YouTube's no joke. Where does it happen? Oh, okay. So it's on this side of the floor.
It's the Ayo Dosunmu game. Jokic and McDaniels square up. Players trying to.
Normal NBA fight, no? Let's see. Anything crazy happen? You know what's really crazy is when Kobe got punched in the face. Remember that? All right, so.
And not take the shot. I mean, Jokic clearly wanting to find out. The two of them shove.
Oh, shit.
And look, there's.
Okay, and so the Nuggets lost. Is that what happened here? So he was salty, I guess. Did he say something to him? All right, well. It's crazy, but that's the norm in the NBA. All right, so, Trump also spoke. I guess I'm really sick and tired of reading his Truth Social post, but I suppose it's the news, so we'll be responsible. So he comments on the situation yesterday. Let's see. Andrew says CIA made YouTube and DARPA made this internet. So yeah, thanks for the super chat, man. Appreciate it. So Trump puts out on Truth Social, I think this was today. What happened last night is exactly the reason that our great military, Secret Service, law enforcement, and for different reasons, every president for the last 150 years have been demanding that a large, safe, and secure ballroom be built on the grounds of the White House. I literally said he's going to say this. I literally said last night when the shooting was fresh, this is going to be Trump's Trojan horse event to get that ballroom built despite judges halting the project, which has happened. Okay, so he continues on to say this event would never have happened with the militarily top secret ballroom currently under construction at the White House. It cannot be built fast enough. While beautiful, it has every highest level security feature there is. Plus, there are no rooms sitting on top for unsecured people to pour in, and is inside the gates of the most secure building in the world, the White House. The ridiculous ballroom lawsuit brought by a woman walking her dog who has absolutely no standing to bring such a suit must be dropped immediately. Nothing should be allowed to interfere with, he put with twice, with its construction, which is on budget and substantially ahead of schedule. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Does anyone take this guy serious anymore? Does anyone take him serious? Someone take the phone out of his hand. People say, oh, he's got somebody tweeting for him. No, I think that's him, actually. Donald Trump's got a secret guy running his Truth Social, and he's doing all the... No, I think that's him. I think that's him. For the obvious reason that it's poorly written. He has no literacy skills. He has no comprehension skills. I always get a brain fart reading his Truth Social posts. I think it's him. Okay. But let's see out of Al Jazeera what the current situation is for the Iranian conflict. And before I read this, I'll give a brief overview if you have not been paying attention. So obviously the Strait of Hormuz is blocked as we currently speak here. And Brent crude oil is, I believe, 106, which is the oil to look at. Let's take a look. So we are currently sitting for oil prices. And of course it's gone up because there's been no peace deal that's actually brokered yet. 107. Got it. So we're currently sitting at 107 for Brent crude. So that's very high. That's way higher than it was previously. And anything above really 90 is a bad situation. Anything above 120 is like an emergency or a catastrophe. But yeah, last week, obviously, Donald Trump had bragged about the fact that the United States and Iran were just one step away from this peace talk, from diplomacy, and everything was going to be good. J.D. Vance on Air Force Two, paired along with Jared Kushner and Stephen Witkoff, had actually never taken off from the tarmac. There were real speculation, and then it came out to be true, that Iranian officials in the Iranian delegation was not going to talk in Pakistan, and so they had left prematurely before the talks had started. And of course, this was because of the fact, and this is all going to tie in nicely, this is what I had been saying, Donald Trump made the bold move in imposing a naval blockade on Iranian ports. if you have not been paying attention, about 2.5 or 3 weeks ago, Abbas Araghchi, foreign minister of Iran, opened up the Strait of Hormuz. He opened it. And he said on X, the Strait of Hormuz is open. Donald Trump, of course, does not fix the situation, only worsens it, something he seems to be really good at doing, and imposes this naval blockade. Again, in tandem, Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, and parliament speaker Mohammad Gharibaf, the ones who have been responsible for negotiating some sort of peace between the United States and talking through the mediator of Pakistan, both said in explicit statements reported on Al Jazeera and X that if the blockade by the United States is not lifted, well then we will continue to block the Strait of Hormuz. This all stems from Donald Trump's great plan a few weeks ago to block the blockade. Remember that when he said, we're going to block the blockade, we're going to fix everything? He fixed nothing. He actually worsened the situation that was on its way to repairing itself because of the extended ceasefire. And so the ceasefire is what helps things, but there's no real ceasefire if you're still trying to destroy their economy. There's malice behind those blockades on Iranian ports. Obviously, you're trying to still hurt them economically. Now, of course, this is in response to Iranians charging tolls on these ships and making money from them, and so that is understood. But to already destroy what could have led to peace talks, especially when we were already in Islamabad, allegedly talking face-to-face with the Iranian officials, is really stupid. And it seems like he's trying to hijack and intercept the potential peace for two reasons. One can speculate. Obviously, the first one is that Donald Trump wants to continue this war. He doesn't actually want to end it. And we know that is likely because he listened to Netanyahu, which is what landed us in this conflict in the first place. And he denied his own intelligence and omitted everything they said and actually went with Netanyahu's plan, which was it would only take maybe a couple days or a few weeks to destroy Iran. This has been 60 days ongoing now. And the MAGA base and Donald Trump himself had said this won't be longer than 2 weeks. First, it was a few days, then 2 weeks. Now we're 60 days in, and Donald Trump is saying we're going to have peace like 3 times a week, and there's no peace. So let's see what the report is out of Al Jazeera. And, you know, I've kind of given you guys a rundown ad nauseum here, so I don't want to drag on for too long. But this reads, Iran's foreign minister leaves Pakistan, heads to Russia for more talks. Abbas Araghchi will speak with senior officials in Moscow, Iran's foreign ministry says. So Araghchi sandwiched a trip to Muscat, Oman, and there's screenshots of that right here, actually. So he was in Oman today. And I assume that they were talking about the situation of the Strait of Hormuz, what that looks like for Oman. Obviously, Iran is blocking that. And here's the photo. This is from Abbas Araghchi's actual Twitter. He says, appreciative of my gracious hosts in Oman, important discussions on bilateral matters and regional developments as only Hormuz littoral states, and our focus included ways to ensure safe transit that is to benefit of all dear neighbors in the world. Our neighbors are our priority. So trying to deal diplomacy with Oman, which if you're not familiar with the geography, just to give you guys a little bit of context, this is where Oman is located. So this is Iran, this is the Strait of Hormuz right here, and then of course this is Oman. Okay, so they both have control of the strait, but now of course Iran has taken full control. Whatever those talks entailed, I didn't look into it, but I would imagine nothing good, especially for the US base or our side. All right, it continues on to read, however, in a sign that indirect efforts were ongoing, the Fars news agency reported that Iran had transmitted written messages to the Americans via mediator Pakistan, which were about some of the red lines of the Islamic Republic of Iran, including nuclear issues and the Strait of Hormuz. But the messages were not part of any negotiations, Fars news agency said. U.S. President Donald Trump last week indefinitely extended the ceasefire that Washington and Tehran agreed to on April 7th, which has largely halted the fighting that began with joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th. A permanent settlement remains elusive, and the economic shockwaves of the war continue to reverberate around the globe. Iran has effectively blocked the vital Strait of Hormuz, cutting off vast quantities of oil, natural gas, and fertilizer from the global market, and sending prices soaring. The U.S. has imposed a blockade of Iranian ports in response. There had been hopes for new rounds of talks on Saturday. The U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner due to visit Islamabad, but Trump later told Fox News he had scrapped the trip, saying there was no point in sitting around talking about nothing. So Trump didn't scrap the trip, and this is kind of the lie that he's been running with to make it seem like he has the upper hand in the situation that he clearly has no control of. And I'll show you the Truth Social post just in case you didn't get a chance to see it yesterday. in which he bragged about canceling the Pakistan peace talks. Here it is right here. One second while I pull this up. The original account that put it up had deleted it, so that's real helpful, of course. Let's see. And while we're waiting, please like the video. Would really appreciate it. Let's go through his Truth Social together. It's really painful to do this, but I can't find it on X. So let's see. So this is the picture of Cole Allen on the ground. This is actually the security footage. If you didn't get a chance to see this. So he appears right here. So that's him, this really blurry blob. You might be able to vaguely see it, faintly see it. So he's running through. This guy like completely buckles. I don't know if this is the guy he hit in the vest. Right, he buckles, but I think he's just flinching, reacting, maybe reaching for his weapon. It's unclear. And he pulls out his weapon. They pull out their weapons, start firing shots. So that's that. And of course, Trump put that on his Truth Social. You got to love the transparency at some points, right? So anyways, this is the Truth Social post. I just canceled the trip to my representatives going to Islamabad, Pakistan to meet with the Iranians. Too much time wasted on traveling, too much work, besides which there is tremendous infighting and confusion within their leadership. No, there is not infighting within their leadership. You are making demands that they are not willing to concede on or talk about, as well as the fact that you block their ports, which is why they won't open the Strait of Hormuz and eventually negotiate an ultimate peace deal with you. He continues on, nobody knows who is in charge, including them. Also, we have all the cards. They have none. If they want to talk, all they have to do is call President Donald J. Trump. Actually, we do know who's in charge, which is why we've been able to extract information from the Iranian side as to why they're not talking to the United States. We do know who is in charge. We're actually on their Twitter pages looking at the developments every single day. So it's a good try, but obviously that's not the case. Anyways, this article continues on to read, on Sunday, Trump told the same channel, I said we're not doing this anymore. We have all the cards. If they want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there's a telephone. We have nice, secure lines. Just unnecessary add-on there. On Saturday, Arakchi met Pakistan's military chief, Asim Munir, a key mediator, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and Minister of Foreign Affairs Ishaq Dar, before flying on to Muscat. He returned to Islamabad on Sunday. In Russia, Iran's foreign ministry said he would speak with, quote, senior officials. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that Arakchi would visit Moscow, but did not say if he would meet with President Vladimir Putin. He likely will, or somebody very close to him. Amid the flurry of meetings, Arakchi signaled skepticism over Washington's intentions, saying he had yet to see if the U.S. is serious about diplomacy. And he said that on his X profile about a day ago. Now, in regards to Donald Trump, I'll show you why the Iranians are being so stubborn. And they telegraphed this would happen. They actually gave the in to the fact that they're not going to come to the table. Now Donald Trump is trying to act like he controlled this and that he's in power and that he canceled the talks. No, they're not talking to you because you keep lying and you keep imposing a siege and violating the ceasefire, as well as Israel also exacerbating the issue. That's why. And this is the refutation that the parliament speaker released on X. You can read it here for yourself. It's translated from Persian or Farsi. The president of the United States made 7 claims in 1 hour, all of 7 which were false. They did not win the war with these lies, and they will certainly not get anywhere with negotiations either. With the continuation of the blockade, the Strait of Hormuz will not remain open. Okay? Passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be conducted based on the designated route and with Iranian authorization, aka cha-ching. They might make some money off of a lot of these ships. The open or closed status of the Strait of Hormuz and regulations governing it will be determined by the field, not by social media, aka this is our ballpark. Media warfare and public opinion engineering are an important part of a war, and the Iranian nation is not affected by these tricks. Read the real, accurate news of the negotiations in a recent interview of the foreign ministry spokesman, and then he links it here. So this is what's happening. You know, Donald Trump is trying to make it seem like Iran is feinting diplomacy, but really the issue is a matter of ego. He does not want to pull out of this conflict without looking like he won something over in return. Obviously, Iran withstood the 40-day bombing campaign by the United States and Israel in their joint effort, was still able to deliver some blowback damage to our closely allied Gulf nations and our military bases, 13 of them, many of which they completely destroyed. They're not operational until they're repaired, which will take a long time, months if not years. They hit a desalination plant in Kuwait that's responsible for converting ocean water to fresh drinking water, something that's very critical to the Middle East, a desert region that is absent of agriculture. And so many things kind of lead to the fact that Donald Trump knows strategically he's on the losing side of this war. And you can bet that his closest advisors and officials are actually echoing the same exact rhetoric that I'm telling you now. And so for him, it's a matter of discharging the Iranians, not starting a military conflict again so that they don't hit our Gulf allies. But at the same time, he can't just look like he attacked them for 40 days and then we completely pull out all of our military assets, all of our naval assets, and the ceasefire is over. That would render us the loser of this conflict. Of course, something he's not willing to actually concede upon. And so for him, he's going to block the blockade, per his words, right? And that's going to do something that actually did nothing except extend the peace deal and the peace talks, which is, again, extending the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, which is why oil keeps jumping back up to 110, 107, 115 at one point. He's not helping the matter. And of course, he's feinting the fact that there's going to be some sort of long-term peace deal, ceasefire, and this is because of the fact that it benefits the United States to do it. Of course, oil markets are volatile, but they react to his statements as well as NASDAQ and Wall Street. And so if Trump is saying there's going to be peace, well, then maybe we'll see that on the charts. We'll see that in S&P 500, in NASDAQ. You know, the other day, they actually hit all-time highs on the stock market. And so for Trump, it's been advantageous to kind of play this hot and cold game if he can keep the economy somewhat stable in such a volatile period of time. The problem is this is not going to work for a long period of time because of the boy who cried wolf effect. How much longer is Donald Trump going to be able to jump on Truth Social and say, we've got it all figured out, we're going to meet with them tomorrow? I mean, just last week, if you were paying attention, it was the most confusing thing. He says the Iranians have a lot of confusion and infighting going on their side, but really it's our side. And that's because Donald Trump is saying, well, don't worry, we've got it all figured out. And he said on Sunday that we were going to be in Islamabad. That's when J.D. Vance was preparing to go over there with his envoy. Then we never went. And then Al Jazeera said, well, it's going to be Tuesday. That's what White House officials are saying. Never happened. And then they said Friday. Never happened. And then Israeli officials were saying Sunday. Never happened. You can fact check me on all of this. Look back chronologically. Every single time the U.S. or Donald Trump echoed some sort of idea that we were going to have the final peace talk, don't worry, it's going to happen. And the entire time, the Iranian officials on their side are staying consistent, and they're saying, we're not talking until you release the blockade. In which, by the way, from that time, I don't even know what the number has grown to now. As of last week, 34 Iranian ships passed through the blockade anyways. So what is the point? What is the point exactly? I mean, if you're going to be there and you're going to impose a blockade, at least stand on business. Yeah, we hit the Iranian cargo vessel, the Tuska. We hit the engine room and then seized the ship, according to Donald Trump. But that's one ship to their several that is freely passing through the strait and freely making it to the coast of Iran, which is what we're trying to block. So, you know, it's just this never-ending issue. And this is what I say when I'm hating on Trump, you know. People always think that it comes from nothing. No, it's like he has no idea what he's doing. He's running around with his head cut the fuck off, and he's telling the American people exactly what they want to hear, and he's banking on their ignorance. But if you just take a quick look at the news, if you take a quick look at the Iranian officials and their statements, you'll realize he's lying, and you'll realize he doesn't have this figured out, and you'll realize this may continue to last until Trump drops his ego. And so that's the real issue here that we're running into as the United States. And, you know, I've said this from the outset of the war. I've said this just a couple weeks ago, and I'll say it again today. This is asymmetric. This is a war of attrition, one that we cannot afford to stay in long term. U.S. Patriot missile interceptor systems are halfway diminished. And reports are now coming out from intelligence assets that if we were to get into a full-scale conflict with a first world power or a very strong country like China, we would actually struggle because of our interceptors being so low in the region. We had to steal THAAD systems from South Korea. Indochina is starving of oil, and it will continue to starve of oil. And all of these shipments that are being blocked by Iran, it's delayed, but they're going to feel it, probably right about now. Same thing with Europe. And so it's a matter of who can last longer. And really, Iran has never had the strongest economy. We've always imposed sanctions on them. What's a couple destroyed buildings really going to make a difference of? In the long grand scheme of things, nothing. They can afford to hang on for much longer. They've always been fighting from the lopsided position. They've always been fighting an uphill battle, but they figured out a way to make it very, very painful for the United States or whoever is attacking them in return. That is what a war of attrition looks like. And this has been the case in the Middle East forever. This is what happened in Iraq. This is what happened in Afghanistan. And we have not even gotten to the point where we've introduced a boots on ground element to this war yet. And if this war restarts, which is a likelihood, I don't want to say it will happen. Hopefully we don't feint diplomacy again, but if this war restarts, then you can guarantee that it'd probably come with it because the air campaign didn't do much. And by the way, we want to stop their nuclear enrichment. We want to seize the uranium. You need boots on ground for that. And you need heavy excavators, and you need a lot of time and a lot of security and everything on ground to be stable for that to happen. And it takes months. So, and now Iran has proposed the fact that we'll talk with the U.S. and we'll open the Strait of Hormuz, but you know what? We just don't want to talk about the nuclear program right now. That's off the table. And obviously, for J.D. Vance and his envoy and Donald Trump as a whole, that's the first issue here. That's why we allegedly started this war, was because of the 60% enrichment. They're a week away from a dirty bomb. J.D. Vance said in the White House meeting, somebody can run around with that dirty bomb. We don't want them to have that. You don't know what they can do with that. These crazy Shia clerics, in the words of Marco Rubio, all of these guys are running with the same rhetoric. No nukes. That's what they're making it seem like front-facingly. And so Iran is, of course, responding to that and saying, well, we'll talk to you, but it's not going to be about the nukes. And do you see what's happening here? They're highlighting how much of a bullshitter Donald Trump is. And they're also highlighting, which, by the way, the parliament speaker had said previously is his goal, that Israel controls us. And somebody might say, Riyadh, where did you connect that? I'll tell you how. If we are in this war for the nuclear program, well, then it'd be really weird if we come to the table and talk to them if they're excluding the nuclear program from the talks. But it seems like it may happen. Now, it all depends on what Trump says tomorrow. But if that's the case, well, then we're allowing them to continue their enrichment. What's really the issue here is that Benjamin Netanyahu is under an immense threat. That being the mid-range missiles program in Iran that has threatened Israel prior and continues to threaten it every single day. If they are aggressive against Iran, their proxy network, their axis of resistance, which they've attempted to weaken with the killing of Qasem Soleimani and Hassan Nasrallah and the pager attack in 2024, which had actually rendered useless because Hezbollah is still dealing a great deal of damage to the IDF in the north, about 1,000 plus casualties. And so really it's like the main issue here is the IRGC at home. Netanyahu knows that. That's the idea he sold to Donald Trump with his 7 visits inside of a year. And as time progresses, this is the parliament speaker's goal. He said, I will expose the fact that Israel is controlling the United States and pushing them into this war against their own interests. This is what Iranian officials are saying. This is what all the Iranian propaganda says, that the United States is a puppet of Israel. They do whatever they ask them to do. And sure, a lot of us know that at home, but they want to make sure that is obvious on a global scale. And they have effectively done that. Look at NATO. NATO refuses to join this war. That has never been the case before. The United Kingdom refuses to join this war. All of our allies condemn this war to some degree and said it was highly unnecessary for that strike on the 28th. We poked the bear. We did not strike the iron while it was hot. That was a terrible idea. And Trump is now attacking NATO in return for this. And so now it's the situation where NATO doesn't want to die for Israel. Well, then, they betrayed us. That's what Donald Trump is saying. That's what Pete Hegseth is saying. And it's like, what? Where did you get that from? And it makes us look weaker. But in totality, and this is the real goal of the Iranian regime, if they are to fall, they want to make sure they fall with the Americans' credibility alongside with it. They want to make sure that if they don't exist as a regime, if they are taken out of power, if they are incapacitated, if they are completely decapitated to the point of no operation, to no functional movement, not a problem, but the United States and their credibility will fall along with us. And it will hit the ground harder than it hits us. We'll hit the ground hard, but the U.S. credibility and their ability of deterrence and their military might, that's going to hit the ground a lot harder. And it already has. It already has. Because what did all the experts predict in the beginning of this conflict? Oh, it's going to be a few days. It's not going to be too long. Iran's going to struggle. Everything else. Been 60 days now. Haven't gotten far. So this is playing into the hands of Iran. And so if you're Donald Trump, you got to make it look like they're not whooping your ass so bad. Block the ports, block the blockade. Hasn't worked. It's actually halting the potential peace that they're willing to come to the table on. And as time grows, their balls grow with it. They refuse to be bullied. And so now their demands get crazier and crazier. Initially, they offered this 15-point plan that had nothing to do with making money, reparations, sanctions relief. And then as time grew and as they made the war more attritional and more asymmetric, well, then their points and their stipulations grew in ballsiness with it, right? They were very daring with their most recent plan, and now they're saying no nukes at all. They were talking to J.D. Vance about the nuclear situation and uranium in early April. Now they're saying that's not even to be discussed about. So can you see? They're becoming more daring. We're charging them up. This is exactly what they want. This is why we say this war is bad. They're loving this, every moment of it. And by the way, all of the neighboring GCC countries, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, are quaking in their fucking boots because Iranian missiles and drones flying over their head destroys the potentiality for tourism and real estate investment, which is what they now have to lean on because the world will soon but surely move away from oil. In the next 20 to 30 years, they got to make money elsewhere. And by the way, the oil is not even working because they can't get their ships through the Strait of Hormuz. So, you know, that's the situation that we're currently facing. Let's read some chats here. Like the video, please, if you have not already. And shout out to all you guys for supporting. I really appreciate the love. Good viewership tonight. God bless all of you. Andrew says, CIA. Oh, I read that already. Oops. Lotus says, yo, Riyadh, keep up the good work. This peace deal getting me worried. Man, it keeps me up at night just thinking about how everything around us will keep getting more and more expensive for us normies if the war continues. And this is the fact here. Thank you, Lotus. Does Trump really care about us? Because it cost me $100 for a full tank the other day. You know, I pumped $70 today because I didn't have my credit card on me, so I had to go in or I had to use Apple Pay, so I had to go in and tell the clerk how much I needed, and I said $75. That usually gets me a full tank. I was 3/4 of a tank. And it's just the little things like that. That adds up against average Americans. And of course, if oil prices skyrocket, well, then goods will get more expensive, groceries, and you know, it just continues to get worse and it worsens. And what does Donald Trump say to the media when they're asking about the elevated gas prices? Oh, don't worry about it. You know, this is what it costs to destroy the nuclear power of Iran. That's what he said. Can you believe it? Well, gas is going to be expensive so we can eradicate this nuclear threat in the Middle East. The nuclear threat where? They don't have a fucking nuke. They don't have a nuke. And they could have made one, but they didn't on the basis that you wouldn't attack them. You've attacked them. So now that system or that program is greenlit. Why do you think they're saying now, oh, we don't want to talk about a nuclear program? Maybe because they're racing to one. Maybe because in the next 6 months, they may actually try and create a nuke for the first time ever. That's in the words of Robert Pape, the legendary political scientist out of the University of Chicago. Not me. Not me. And all the experts are saying the same exact thing. Now, if there's any time that Iran would have made a nuke, it's likely. It's likely in this moment because their sovereignty is under the greatest threat that it's ever been under. We actually attacked them. We actually bombed them. And we killed Khamenei on the first day, their Ayatollah, their religious supreme leader. And now his son is even more extreme, or he was even more extreme, is now the ultimate ruler, is now the authoritarian over the IRGC. And he's the one who's likely telling Arakchi and Galibaf to not go to Pakistan unless the United States concedes we're not talking about uranium. Because he needs to build that bomb if he wants to guarantee he won't be removed from power or anybody else won't be fucking killed. But this is what the dumbasses don't tell you. Iran was going to make a nuke. If it was only so simple on its face like that, you dumbass, it's never that simple. And geopolitics, especially in the Middle East, is extremely complex. So this is what they sell to the American people. Islam, terrorism, nukes. It's all just so Israel can get what they want. Are you stupid? Or have you not woken up to that yet? Like, we got to grow brains here. We got to really think critically. And I'm going hard because the MAGA base is still supporting a lot of this. And again, another report. This is at 10:19. Axios repackaged Iran's refusal to discuss a nuclear program as a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran didn't propose anything. It told mediators nuclear is off the table entirely. Futures pumped on the headline. So, you know, just a rephrasing of everything that we said would happen. Let me read some chats here. The scribed voices said, the betraying has started. Can you explain to the lovely MAGA supporters what this means next for America? Yep, I'll go into that in a moment. Benjamin Yale 6111 says, hey Riyadh, jar headed here. IDF KIA is 2100 plus. Isn't that crazy? That's crazy. And I think my brother said that 2K or 1K the other day. I couldn't remember. But this is the case every time. Hezbollah destroys them. And let me pull up this Axios report. Hezbollah destroys them on the ground every time. You know, the IDF cannot keep up. And that's why they kind of have to commit war crimes. You know, they kind of have to like carpet bomb villages because they've got no shot on the ground of actual fair warfare. You know? So it is what it is. But to describe voices, yeah, so Petro Yuan, essentially the United States gains a lot of its political and military leverage from several aspects. The fact that we have the strongest military in the world, everything else like that. But one of the main commodities or real points of leverage that the United States exercises against the world is the petrodollar, which is what the currency is for oil to be traded in globally, at least if a country wants to actually make some sort of money and be on the table. UAE the other day had actually threatened to the fact that they are going to start trading in Chinese currency yuan, which if that does happen, and the fact that they're flirting with that idea is scary, well then the United States can actually lose a lot more power than we once thought was possible at the outset of this war. That's why we're the strongest country in the world. And so if this war of attrition continues, and this is what all the advisors are likely panicking about in the MAGA base, in Trump's corner, in his ear, they're telling him, hey, we got to stop because the petrodollar is at more risk than it ever has been. And that was the whole idea with Venezuela, right? To cut off a lot of the global oil market, make it in favor of us, deepen our reserves, cut China off from the 2 to 4% that they extracted from Venezuela, cut Cuba off, threaten Mexico if they give Cuba any oil. And so now Cuba's dealing with this energy crisis. What are we going to do about that? Who knows? Likely sees more control. Not that they're a Soviet threat anymore, they're this communist threat anymore. That's kind of like done. That's fizzled out. But the real concern here is if you think gas is expensive, it'll get a lot worse. And everything else will get a lot more expensive if the petrodollar is not the hottest commodity anymore, which is where the wind is blowing. That's where the wind is blowing. And me and my brother broke that down in detail a few streams ago. And really a few streams ago, I mean like 2 or 3 weeks ago, everybody was like, oh, that's a bit far-fetched, guys. Let's pull back. And then the UAE came out with that statement, per the Wall Street Journal. So, scary stuff. But yeah, allegedly Donald Trump is going to summon the Situation Room today for a response because Iran is offering to open the strait. And this is what it seems like. They are saying, look, we'll open the strait, but enough with the nuclear talks. So let's take a look here. Iran offers U.S. deal to reopen strait, but postpones nuclear talks. This is 2 hours ago, again, by Barack Ravid. We'll read it with a grain of salt. Iran gave the U.S. a new proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and end the war, with nuclear negotiations postponed for a later stage, according to a U.S. official and 2 sources with knowledge. Why it matters: the diplomacy is in a stalemate, and the Iranian leadership is divided about what nuclear concessions should be on the table. The Iranian proposal would bypass that issue en route to a faster deal, but lifting the blockade and ending the war would remove President Trump's leverage in any future talks to remove Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium and convince Tehran to suspend enrichment. 2 primary war objectives for Trump. That's what I said. That's why we started this. So if we concede to this, I'm happy. Don't get it twisted. I'm happy, but that will really make the United States look stupid. And now that's what we have to balance. And this is what I said in the beginning. There is no political off-ramp that favors Donald Trump except now completely eradicating the IRGC. And that's not feasible, at least in the near future. So, man, it's hot. I got to crank the AC. I'm going too crazy. I'm like sweating. See me getting greasy? All right. Anyways, focus. So, but lifting the blockade and ending the war would remove President Trump's leverage. That's what we need to know. What to watch? Trump is expected to hold a Situation Room meeting on Iran on Monday with his top national security and foreign policy team, according to the 3 U.S. officials. One source said Trump's team would discuss the stalemate in the negotiations and potential next steps. Yeah, no shit. Trump signaled in an interview with Fox News on Sunday that he wants to continue the naval blockade that is choking off Iran's oil exports, hoping it will get Tehran to cave over the next few weeks. When you have vast amounts of oil pouring through your system, if for any reason this line is closed because you can't put it into containers or ships, what happens is that line explodes from within. Then they say they only have about 3 days before that happens, Trump said. Yeah, been a lot more than that. The crisis in the negotiations between the U.S. and Iran deepened over the weekend after a visit by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to Pakistan that ended with no progress. The White House had announced Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner would be meeting Araghchi in Islamabad, but the Iranians were non-committal. Trump told Axios the Iranian position led him to cancel that trip. No, you just know you have nothing to talk about, and they don't want to talk to you. I see no point of sending them on an 18-hour flight in the current situation. It's too long. We can do it just as well by telephone. The Iranians can call us if they want. We are not going to travel just to sit there. On Sunday, Araghchi held talks with Omani officials, that's what we just looked at earlier, in Muscat, that focused on the Strait of Hormuz, then went back to Islamabad for a second round of talks. On Monday, Araghchi was expected to travel to Moscow and meet Russian President Vladimir Putin. That's not confirmed, but he'll probably meet either Putin or somebody very close to him. Behind the scenes, Araghchi raised the plan to bypass the nuclear issue during his meetings in Islamabad, 2 sources with knowledge said. One source said Araghchi made it clear to the Pakistani, Egyptian, Turkish, and Qatari mediators over the weekend that there is no consensus inside the Iranian leadership about how to address the U.S. demands. The U.S. wants Iran to suspend uranium enrichment for at least a decade and remove its enriched uranium from the country. Asinine. That can't happen. They won't allow it. The new proposal, given to the U.S. via the Pakistani mediators, focuses on solving the crisis over the Strait and the U.S. blockade first. And so we've degraded. And you see this process of degradation. First it was, we're going to take the uranium. We're going to take all the nukes. Iran will be nothing after this. Now it's, please open the Strait. Please. Pretty please. What the fuck? That's the strongest country in the world? Talk about a bad decision and the consequences we're now feeling 60 days later. Do you remember in the beginning? Marco Rubio, they're crazy Shia clerics and it's not going to take a lot. Donald Trump, the United States is the hottest country in the world. Pete Hegseth boosting at the Pentagon saying, well, you know, we destroyed 90% of their missile launcher and their launch systems, their launch pads, their mobile launchers, you know, their SAMs, their surface-to-air missiles. And now Trump is about to go into the Situation Room with all of these important people to go, can we open the Strait, please? Can we please open the Strait? Can we open the Strait of Hormuz? It's like, bro, what did we start all of this for? And look, I'm not saying we don't know what Trump is going to react to, or we don't know how he's going to react to this stipulation proposed by Iran. But it's just funny. Do you see the process of degradation? Do you see how, like, we are slowly realizing every single thing we promised we would do is a little bit harder than we first initially thought? And this is what faulty Israeli intelligence gets you. But this was the goal of Benjamin Netanyahu. It wasn't to destroy Iran in 2 or 3 days. Of course, that would have been the desired outcome. He likely knew that was not possible. He really was just aiming for the United States to finally get dragged in. So there could be this forever tension between the United States and Iran that is way worse than what it previously was, because at least we never attacked them before. And we likely had a better grounds or basis for these kinds of maximalist demands prior to attacking them. Hottest country in the world, by the way. Hottest country in the world. Which it is, I agree, but it won't be if we persist in this Middle Eastern intervention bullshit. That's the whole thing here. Let's continue on, because this is all the juice right now. Everybody's reading on this article. Oops. And by the way, guys, you know, not to toot my own horn, this article dropped 2 hours ago. Come on. We're quick on the news. We're quick on the news. Okay? The news is fast on the weekends. Or if the news comes out on the weekends, I try to be fast. Anyways, the new proposal given to the U.S. via the Pakistani mediators focuses on solving the crisis over the Strait and the U.S. blockade first, aka the nuclear thing is off the table. As a part of that, the ceasefire would be extended for a long period, or the parties would agree to a permanent end to the war. According to the proposal, the nuclear negotiations would only start at a later stage after the Strait was open and the blockade lifted. By the way, the blockade being lifted is the first part that must happen. The White House has received the proposal, but it's unclear whether the U.S. is willing to explore it. So, yeah, I mean, none of this is really that important. I guess I'll read it. These are sensitive diplomatic discussions, and the U.S. will not negotiate through the press. As the president has said, the United States... That's what the president has been doing, though. That's all he does, actually. As the president has said, the United States holds the cards and will only make a deal that puts the American people first. Oh, really? Oh, really? Then get the fuck out of the Strait of Hormuz. That's what puts us first. And stop this war. That's what puts us first, actually. You want to put America first? Love it. Love it. Music to my ears. Completely pull out every single military asset that is meant to offensively attack Iran in the next 2 days. That would be America first. And then create a peace deal with them. And this is what me and my brother said. Don't seize their uranium. Don't tell them to remove it. Don't tell them to relocate it. No. Involve the IAEA and halt them at 60% only. Don't go above that. That would be realistic in this situation. And that I think Iran would concede to. As long as they have their 60% precious enriched uranium and it doesn't go any lower than that per our command, well then, for them, they're still within an arm's reach of creating a bomb, but with the inspections from the IAEA, they wouldn't be able to do it without us knowing right away, and they wouldn't be able to do it without breaking the plan, which would then be valid grounds for us to attack them. And that's how you do it. That would be perfect. And they would agree to that, so long as we agreed to not attack them under any circumstance. Of course, that's Netanyahu's nightmare, but it's what the United States actually needs. As the president said, the United States holds the cards and will only make a deal that puts the American people first, never allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon, White House spokesperson Olivia Wales told Axios. So, you know, tons of hoopla and nonsense. What can I say? What can I say, huh? But anyways, let us get into this interview that happened today. Apparently, on 60 Minutes, some insults were hurled at him. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning...
Okay, let's not act dumb. Obviously, he's referring to Trump and the entire cabinet. I mean, Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files like 6 million times. And he was begging the DOJ to scrub his name out as much as they could before they dropped the full thing. That's why they edged. If you don't remember the timeline, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel kept saying, we're going to release it, we're going to release it, we're going to release it. They released it. It was this like BS kind of quarter amount of what was actually supposed to be released. Everything was redacted. No one was able to draw any conclusions from it. And then they released just 3.5 million and pandemonium ensued. So
I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick...
No comment. Does anyone else, I can't help but be thoroughly entertained by Donald Trump's behavior and his rhetoric, excuse me, you shouldn't be reading that. He's just so unprofessional. It is kind of funny and enjoying sometimes. It's quite joyful to watch. Excuse me. Just cuts her off. It's like, yeah, hey, he was talking about you. Hey, you were a close accomplice of Epstein. Yeah, you did cut ties from him, but like you were rocking with him while he was like doing the crazy shit he was doing. And he's like a foreign asset for a foreign nation and blackmailed our high-ranking political officials and leaders of universities at Ivy League schools. The whole compromat thing, like he was kind of doing exactly that. That was your man's at one point. You guys were rocking in Mar-a-Lago.
Go ahead, let's finish the interview.
The other thing that he wrote in the
Disgraceful.
Disgraceful. You're really nasty. You know that? You're really gross. Well, is this another clip? We'll pull up the full. And this is the thing with him, you know, this is his whole MO, is he can never look weak. He's always got to be the one in the higher position. He's never subdued. No one ever scares him. He's the man. I mean, do you really need to give that detail? You know, I was bent over a little bit, but I was still tall, you know, and not too tall. What the? You were bent over because you didn't want to get absolutely annihilated by bullets. That's why. What are you ashamed about? You know, like, what are you posturing for? Just shut up. Trump just always has to, you know, with Trump, he just has to mog the situation. You know, Trump could have the most honest mistake. He could just maybe trip outside the White House, you know, miss a step. It happens to the best of us, you know, have a lapse in thought, misspeak. And it's always, no, you know, what had happened was the blade of grass, it was too tall. And I told the White House staff, you gotta clean the grass. You gotta make sure it's cut good. I like it low, very low. And it was too tall. And so I had new shoes on that day and I tripped. Okay, nigga, or you're 80 and you just kind of lost your step. You lost your footing. How about that? Okay. We know you're old. It's like such cope with him. It's like, what are we doing? You know, and he drags it. He drags it. Trump wants to make a point. He makes 30 micro points before making that point. That's why reading his Truth Social posts are so painful. I mean, really, look, I'm not bullshitting you. Here, take a look at this tweet that I just read earlier. This is the Pakistan tweet. He says, I just canceled the trip of my representatives going to Islamabad, Pakistan to meet with the Iranians. Too much time wasted on traveling, too much work, besides which there is tremendous infighting and confusion within their leadership. Nobody knows who was in charge, including them. Also, we would have all the cards. They have none. If they want to talk, they have to do it. It's just like the way he speaks. Once again, the failing New York Times has attempted to grossly mischaracterize what should be hailed as the restoration of beauty and grandeur to our nation's capital as something else completely. Lafayette Park across the street from the White House had been left in disarray after decades of neglect and lack of maintenance. The fountains didn't work. The grass, trees had died. The walking paths and benches were almost unusable. It's just, you know, in other tweets you can really see it's a lot more evident, but he like drags it. It's like, Mr. President, please get to the point. Get to the point. Get to the point. It's just so frustrating.
But I was walking.
It's funny, but it's like we've got to exercise some professionalism here and have that healthy balance. The scribed voice is $5. Thank you so much. Highly unlikely, but a thought. What are the chances that American people turn on the government and become a communist country after the war? Is that possible? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Unless Mamdani becomes president. Let's pray that's not the case.
Yeah.
Oh, Trump is so confusing because sometimes he's kind of sharp. You know, does anybody agree with me? Sometimes he's sharp and it's like, ooh, he's on the ball. And then sometimes it's like, ooh, he has dementia. And there's never an in-between. He's either like laser locked in focus, mogging you, or he's like absolutely incoherent, Joe Biden-like. There's just no in-between, you know? But I really knew it was over. I knew he lost the plot when he posed himself as Jesus Christ on Twitter. That's when I was like, or Truth Social, sorry. That's when I was like, yeah, okay, yeah. Our current sitting president has lost his goddamn mind. But sometimes he's locked in, you know, he's describing the story. He's recounting the story quite well. You know, he's giving the details. You know, the bar is low. Obviously, I'm crediting him for just talking straight, but you know, he's old. He's an older guy. He's an old guy. So I'm going to continue to be of the opinion that that response was trash. Okay. I know Secret Service is undermanned. They're understaffed. They rely on local forces heavily, especially regarding the perimeter. But I mean, let me see if I can pull up that angle they're showing here. The response was just not as good as I would have liked it to be. Funny enough, that angle is actually very difficult to find. But I thought that the response was pretty lazy, you know. Here, as I'm looking for it, I'll continue. That response was not the one I want to see for the president of the United States. Whether I like him or not, I don't want to see our president killed, you know. And if you can't agree with me on that, you're a nutcase. But, I mean, look at this. Shots rang off. The shots have rang off, okay? Let's start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it took him about 8 or 9 seconds to actually shield the president. And then to get him off the stage, we're at 10 seconds now. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. JD's gone. 16, 17. They usher him off. Too slow for me. I'm sorry. My standards are high for the current sitting U.S. president, the most powerful person on the planet. Yeah, it needs to be a quicker response. To shield him, it shouldn't be 10 seconds. To get him off the stage, around 17 seconds roughly. I don't like that. I don't like that. Should have been a little quicker. What do you think, chat? You think I'm being unfair? I think I'm being pretty fucking fair.
And then 20 seconds to get you out. It looked chaotic. At one point, you were down. What was happening?
About 17. We're being fair. 17. And look, part of this could be because of Trump's ego, right? He wants to make it seem like he's not scared. He's not frightened. So maybe his agents are commanding him, Mr. President, get on the floor. And he's like, well, what? I don't see any shooter. You know? Maybe he's being hard-headed. We know how Trump is. I think we have a good idea of what kind of person he is off of the camera. I think he's really the same person off camera as he is on. That I give to him. His authenticity is no secret. So maybe he was giving him a hard time. But the response in which they had to actually shield him and get in front of him, that's unacceptable. And like Larry Johnson said, I agree with him. You know, if there's a shooting in the vicinity of the president of the United States, you don't get the vice president off of the stage first. That's not appropriate. Not saying, oh, his life matters less. And I mean, like, effectively, you know, it's the president, then the vice president. If there's any sort of chain of events in regards to the response, it's the president first. He's first priority. And every single agent should be bum rushing his location and getting him out of harm's way. You know, so I definitely agree. Not the right way it was done. Well, he's kind of a socialist, you know. I just don't agree with his policies. Not to do the whole cringe thing, you know. Free market, capitalism, that's where I lean.
Walking halfway, and then I drop down at the...
But, you know, not to get off topic here, Mamdani's smart, you know. He's courageous, he's smart, he's an expert campaigner. He's funny, he's witty, he's likable. And that's what he has going for him. And that's what the right is kind of missing. We need a little bit more of that, especially to get in contact with the youth, to motivate the youth to vote. So I said that the other day. I kind of went on a whole rant about it. Yeah, not a big fan of Mamdani. I'm right outside of New York, though. Right outside of New York. Might go pay bro a visit. Say what's up. I'm sorry. He was fucking out. He was out. You know, he's a man on a mission. He's a crazy man on a mission. You know, he booked it. I'm actually happy he was apprehended. I mean, bro, you know, with a 10-second response from when the shots first occurred, it's actually feasible this guy could have maybe just ran through the security and made it into the actual ballroom where the dinner was taking place. God forbid that had been the case. I mean, the guy had clearly stated his motives. I don't want to actually hurt anybody who's innocent. I don't want to hurt anybody outside of the administration, whatever. Still a psycho. Doesn't excuse him. Doesn't make him innocent. Doesn't free him from the guilt. But, you know, he was a man on a mission. He is so ruthless. I kind of love it. It's sometimes based. It's needed. She's asking good questions, you know, and she's a journalist, so that's her job. I'm not familiar with her name, 60 Minutes journalist, but if I was a king, I didn't be talking to you. Yes, yeah, pretty good. That was pretty good. Yeah, so he's going to do it again. And good for him, you know, and I always say, you know, Trump always tries to make it seem like he's not threatened, talking about how he was slightly bent over and everything. But, you know, you can't let these things scare you forever. You know, we can't let these crazy people win. You got to still run the show. You got to still do the dinner, White House Correspondents' Dinner. It's an annual tradition to honor the First Amendment as well as journalism and free press. So, you know, it is honorable that he wants to do it again. And so they'll probably set it up in the next 30 days or so with hopefully heightened security because, yikes, what was that last night? But regardless,
see the security.
Give credit where it's due, for sure. Hey, guys, while we're at it, we're going to look into how the Iranian Air Force actually did bomb U.S. military bases despite Pete Hegseth saying that he eradicated the Air Force in the first week. And I think that's out of the Wall Street Journal. We're going to read it right now. But in the meantime, while you guys are here hanging out, please go over and check out the Instagram clips page. I got my editor running this. I know I'm always reminding you, but I want to try and grow this. Once this gets to like 5 or 10K followers, then that's when Meta really likes to pick up the steam and get me pushed and get more people on the streams. Of course, support the mission. And so if you guys can go over and show that some love, give it a follow, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at this on Twitter from Brian Allen. And Professor Morandi actually retweeted it, which is how I was able to see it. But this was tweeted today, and I guess this was out of NBC News. Sorry. So take a look at this. And this is kind of important. And you know what? While you guys just read that, let's see if I can find a clip of Pete Hegseth talking about how they destroyed the Air Force. Oh, and I had a super chat. I'll read it in one moment. My bad. So this reads, Washington, out of Washington, American military bases and other equipment in the Persian Gulf region suffered extensive damage from Iranian strikes that is far worse than publicly acknowledged and is expected to cost billions of dollars to repair. Of course, we've covered this already. You guys know that there's no secret there. According to 3 U.S. officials, 2 congressional aides, and other persons familiar with the damage, the Iranian regime swiftly retaliated after the Trump administration attack on February 28th, hitting dozens of targets across the U.S. military bases in 7 Middle Eastern countries. Those attacks struck warehouses, command headquarters, aircraft hangars, satellite communications infrastructure, runways, high-end radar systems, and dozens of aircrafts, according to the U.S. officials and an assessment by the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C. And by the way, they attacked Prince Sultan Air Base and destroyed our AWACS, which we were already running very low on, the E3. So, that was towards the tail end of the conflict before the ceasefire. So they knew what to hit, and that was probably per the go-ahead or kind of the aid that we received from Russian intelligence, or Iran received from Russian intelligence during the conflict. I just can't believe I just said we. People are going to take that and run. Don't clip that! Don't clip that! The tip that they received from Russian intelligence, and then, of course, China giving them military support, really the radar systems that they utilized as well. Continue on here. In the initial days of the war, the Iranian F-5 fighter jet-bombed the U.S. base camp Buhrang in Kuwait, despite the base having air defense, a rare breach that marked the first time an enemy fixed-wing aircraft has struck an American military base in years, according to the 2 U.S. officials. The 3 U.S. officials familiar with the damage to the U.S. bases in the Middle East described it as extensive. The headquarters building for the U.S. Navy in Bahrain, the nerve center for the Navy's operations in the region, sustained serious damage. The officials said that they said other parts of the base in Bahrain also suffered significant damage that is likely repairable. Multiple hangars and warehouses at Ali Al Salim Air Base in Kuwait also were struck, according to the American Enterprise Institute's unofficial assessment that was reviewed by NBC News. The assessment also shows munition storage facility at a military base in Erbil in northern Iraq was damaged, and a runway at the sprawling Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar was destroyed. Of course, no surprise here that all this stuff was destroyed. We knew that. It's just the way it was destroyed, which is a little bit more of a surprise. Sorry, I'll go ahead and resize that so you guys can read along with me. U.S. bases had been cleared of U.S. troops and other personnel, so many of the bases were left essentially empty and vulnerable to attack by Iranian missiles and drones. Many of the troops who were temporarily relocated are expected to return to the bases once tensions in the region subside. According to the AEI's assessment, Iran hit more than 100 targets across 11 bases in 7 Gulf countries. Those attacks fell on U.S. and host nation bases in Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. As part of Epic Fury, the potential future costs to rebuild American military infrastructure overseas may include repair, reconstruction, outright replacement, or even abandonment decommissioning of locals, Mackenzie Eaglin, a senior fellow at AEI, said in a statement about the group's assessment. War damage also includes estimated cost for infrastructure that is unsalvageable. Eaglin's cost estimate for repairing the infrastructure is more than $5 billion, but that amount does not account for some of the radar systems, weapon systems, aircraft, and other equipment destroyed in the Iranian strikes. She said Eaglin has worked on defense and budgetary and military readiness issues for years and is a former Pentagon official. The Iranians damaged at least 2 air defense systems in the region, according to the U.S. officials, and that makes sense. That's why we were trying to extract the THAAD system from South Korea. And so all the bases here. 5th Fleet Headquarters, Erbil Military Base, Al Udeid, that's the biggest one. So they damaged a runway in the biggest one, damage to a general administrative building, satellite communications, 11 reports of damage to radar protection, infrastructures, and small or large warehouses. So all of this stuff you can read through, but apparently some of this was thanks to their Air Force that we had allegedly destroyed very early on in the war. And that was per Pete Hegseth. Let's see if we can find his statement here. Crazy. And I'll go ahead and read the super chat too. If there's any others, I'll read them. My bad, guys. I try to read these very quickly. Balkan Goy, that's a funny name. Balkan Goy says, what is your best advice on becoming more articulate and eloquent like yourself? Killer show, much love. Hey, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. Articulate and eloquent, I mean, you know, I don't think I'm that good, but of course I get compliments all the time, so I really appreciate it. You know, it's kind of, I suppose, a natural ability. I'd be lying if I ever said I sat down and worked on my ability to speak. I just kind of know how to do it, I suppose. Really, the biggest part about streaming is ensuring you understand the material you're about to cover and give your spin and your opinion about it. You know, you read a few articles, you see what's going on, you tell people how we got here, you tell them what's currently happening and then what likely will happen. And of course, you have to do that in a smooth manner that is digestible or easy for people to watch. So, you know, just work on your speech, read out loud. I know that helps a lot, but it's difficult to really explain. It's just something I kind of know how to do. You know, I don't mean to sound conceited or cocky. I don't mean that at all, but I just kind of turn on the mic and get going. You know, I just yap. To me, I'm just yapping. I'm always a yapper, as I'm doing right now. All my friends know I'm a yapper. You know, my good friends, I'll be talking to them, and I realize I'm just going ad nauseum, and it's like I like to hear myself talk. And they're like, hey, nigga, please shut up. So it's, I guess it's a natural ability. You know, I just don't know how to shut my mouth. But thank you so much, Balkan Goy. Good name, by the way. Coyote says, first time, and you seem like a pretty neutral guy. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm pro-American. You know, I want the Americans to pull out of this conflict without damaging our global reputation, which has kind of already left that stage. You know, we look pretty bad on a global stage. But I want us to pull out before things get worse. You know, I don't want this to go nuclear. I don't want us to continuously attack Iran with nothing in return. I don't want us to continuously benefit Israel. That doesn't help anybody in the region. That destroys our relations with the Gulf countries. And I care about this country. You know, I love this country. I'm proud to be American. I enjoy the fruits of this country. I was talking to my friend earlier today. I can't find this Pete Hegseth shit. He bragged about destroying the Air Force. Somebody has the clip. Feel free to send it in. But I think you could take my word on it. But, you know, I was talking to my friend earlier today, and we're both from third world countries, right? Great enough. And we're both born here. And we couldn't help but appreciate the country. You know, he was talking about how he had sent his Gymshark shorts to his cousin back home in South America, in El Salvador is where he's from. And his cousin was raving that, you know, when he wears these shorts, it's going to be like all the hype in the town. You know, people are going to think that he has money. He was so thankful. And it's even like that for me. If I send, you know, shoes or clothes back home to my cousins, I still have family members in the Middle East. And it's just such a blessing, you know, it's a telling of the blessing that we're able to be in this country, and it's our birthright to be proud of it. But it's also the fact that we were born here, and I thank God that my parents came here the right way, and they came here under legal status, and they worked hard, never borrowed a dollar from the government, my mother or my father, God bless both of them, and raised me and Myron to be the guys we are today, to give you guys the news and, you know, be personalities that you enjoy hearing current events from. But you know, we were talking about the fact that he'd be grateful of those shorts, and it's crazy. You know, we live in a first world country where we have running water, we have electricity, and despite the fact that there is a potential global energy crisis, we won't feel it. You know, we won't really feel it. When the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, that's actually Asia and Europe that may feel that, and that's if this continues, which hopefully it doesn't, until those countries will exercise the ability to pay for those ships to pass through and get the oil regardless. But really, the United States is disinvolved from the back end effects, at least on its face or in the short term, in regards to an energy shortage or oil. We have deep reserves, and we have a strong military. We have a strong economy. We have the petrodollar on our side, which is all at stake, by the way, for this senseless war. This is why I'm so passionate about being against it. But, you know, I really am appreciative of this country. You know, I love America. I am American, and I'm proud of that. And I think there's a lack of that sometimes from people who are Arab or Muslim, and maybe that's because their region was destroyed by American actions, of course motivated by Israel, and that's the whole thing that I went into in yesterday's video. But I separate the policy and the poor policy decisions in our politicians from the actual country itself. This country gave me tons of opportunity. You know, this country gives me the right to say whatever I want, at least to some degree. You know, the free speech maybe is a Western mythology, if you will. But regardless, you know, we have our amendments and we have the things we can do that is very great in comparison to other countries. My buddy actually just visited China for some fair they had in production or whatever. You know, they're capital of human labor, and he has like this business, so he had to go there for something, whatever it was. And he was telling me, he's like, man, nothing is like America. You know, no one there has like a soul. Obviously, it's a communist country. He said it's very advanced on the level of the U.S., but in regards to the people there, they're cold, they're nasty. You know, he actually wanted to pray. He's Muslim. He wanted to pray in the restaurant that he was in because it was time to pray, whatever. And the camera system was on, so he couldn't pray because the restaurant owner told him, if you pray, you can get arrested for that. And it's just like little things like that. We have so much benefit of being in this country. So I know the progressives will be like, oh, you're glazing the country too much. Look, I will always hold America accountable for the mistakes it makes because I care about the greater good of the future of this country. That's why I attack Donald Trump. That's why I go against our foreign policy, because it's actually destroyed the country. It's not benefited us. But at the same time, I will probably never leave. I will raise my children here. It's just the most advanced and best country. You know, you've got your first world countries and your first world powers, America, Japan, a lot of Eastern Europe, the Scandinavian nations, but America by far is the best. You know, we got the big cities. We got New York, we got Miami, we got LA, we got Chicago. You got your cities in Texas, you know, and we just take it for granted, man, you know? Take it for granted. Anything you want, any supplier, any shipper, any brand, they're all headquartered out of the United States, you know? So it's the little things that we take for granted. You know, when I went to Sudan, bro, it was like you were lucky if you actually got electricity running for the day. I'd open up Instagram, it'd take 10 minutes to upload the first story that I would post or view the first story that was uploaded on my feed, you know? I'm like, that's how people live. So if you're born in this country and you don't have roots outside of it, good for you. But like the negative of that is you really will never like be a part of a third world society or nation and appreciate America more. I'm grateful for going to those third world nations because that makes me really love where I'm from even more. So love to be American, unapologetically American. I don't care what anybody says. This country means the world to me. And that's why I do this show, you know, because I care about the interests of America. Not to be super nationalistic and everything, but, you know, I was having some conversations with some good friends today, and we're just like, yo, thank God we were born here, man. Fuck the liberals and the bleeding heart progressives who always say, fuck this country and burn the flag. Fuck those guys, you know. This country has given us all the opportunity to go to university to study. Yeah, it costs a lot of money, but so what? You know, so what? This is the most balanced, most fruitful country in the world, and you'd have to be incredibly ignorant to deny that. So Muslim, Christian, Jewish, you know, if you're American, be thankful. Be thankful. 13 Wheeler says, I completely agree with you and your brother's position with the Iran versus United States conflict. I'm a Christian believer. I oppose your religion, but aside from that, I've learned a lot from you and your brother. Hey, God bless you, bro. That's your prerogative. You have your own faith. I'm not here to convince people to be a Muslim or a Christian or whatever. I'm Muslim, and I disagree with the other religions, but that's fine. That's why, you know, that's a high IQ thing. You know, I can disagree with you, but we can still get together for the greater good of seeing what's going on in the world. Like this, Arakchi just touched down in St. Petersburg. Here's the video from RT. There he is. That's him right there, foreign minister. Putin likely not on the runway. I wouldn't think. Interesting. So that's the foreign minister of Iran. He just touched down at St. Petersburg. Chief Taro, thank you so much for the 20 gifted. If you just got gifted a subscription, say thank you in the chat. God bless you, bro. You're always showing love, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. Shout out to Chief Taro. We love Chief Taro. We love him. Yeah. Still cold in Russia, huh? shitty ass sleet weather, huh? So, yeah, what he's doing in Russia, I don't know, but Iran only wants to negotiate terms to end the war. They'll open up the strait. They're not talking about the nuclear. What they're doing in Russia, we'll find out in the next few days. Maybe Russia is going to step into a broker peace now, as there's been some voice for discontent in regards to Pakistan's role. But Pakistan just wants peace in the region, and that's why China stepped in as well. And China takes a lot of oil from the Gulf countries that have now been under siege, or this blockade imposed by Iran. And so it does kind of, in the long run, not benefit China for the Strait of Hormuz to be blocked as well. But of course, they can just kind of remedy that issue short term with the Iranian oil they receive, the pipeline system, whatever else. So it's not the biggest issue in the world. And then people talk about Venezuela. They barely got any from Venezuela, but everybody's trying to end the conflict. It's just Donald Trump trying to flex his muscles in the middle and ensure that we don't actually get anywhere in regards to a peace deal, even though he's claiming that's what he so desperately wants. He's saying the Iranians want it desperately. No, it's likely you that needs it desperately, and the American base as well. That's just the facts. So this is the Parliament Speaker's statement today on X. This was around 4:01 p.m. Eastern Time. He says, they brag about the cards. By they, he means the United States. Let's see. Supply cards equals demand cards. So SOH partly played, BEM unplayed, pipelines unplayed. This is like difficult to understand. But at the end, he says, add summer vacation to the right unless they want to cancel it for the United States. So somebody, thank God they explained it here. Galibov's point is simple. The West has cards like oil reserves, demand cuts, and price control, but Iran has real physical cards like the Strait of Hormuz, like the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and the pipeline pressure. And maybe that's a term you guys are or a place you guys are unfamiliar with. This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is just west on the corner of Yemen and the Arab Peninsula. So take a look. This is it here. Let's get the map going, just so you see where we are entirely. Let's open up the map, so I'm not giving you guys this poverty view here. Okay, so strait is obviously a narrow passageway of water, if you didn't know. This is the Strait of Hormuz, okay, Persian Gulf, Gulf of Oman, and then that branches out into the Arabian Sea, Gulf of Aden. But this is where the Bab el-Mandeb Strait is. Now, this can be militarily occupied by the Houthis at the command of the IRGC within moments. Okay, the Houthis are a paramilitary group, or a part of the axis of resistance that is controlled by the IRGC. In simple terms, they're an Iranian proxy. And so they've interrupted shipments in the Red Sea before. They've pirated ships. They've jumped on ships, disrupted flow. And of course, this is how the oil would get to Europe. It would go through the Strait of Hormuz. If that's blocked by the blockade, which is what I said previously, well, then they've got to get through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And the Houthis can get in here and intercept or interrupt a lot of this flow. And we all know from a political perspective, it's much easier to disrupt the flow that you are local to, that's right on your waters, on your coastline, than it is for the United States to deploy their forces all the way over there and actually secure and reopen it, and then guarantee those oil vessels that it will be secure and reopen while that military faction is continuously hurling threats over that strait. So that's kind of why it's asymmetric to have this closed and try and reopen it. But this goes into, oops, sorry, I zoomed out a little bit too much there. This is the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and obviously this goes into the Red Sea. But the biggest thing here, this is where the man-made passageway, the Suez Canal, home to Egypt, is, okay? It's very skinny. As you can see, it's a man-made passageway. Runs all the way up into here, okay? And where does that lead us to? Europe, okay? And that's why it's very important that this stays open, because whatever can get past the Strait of Hormuz still has to go this way. The reason why this was created is so ships historically would not have to go all the way around Africa, which would add tons of time to shipments, okay? And this is obviously what breaches us into the Mediterranean Sea. So, very crucial strait. And what he's saying here is that Iran has the card of Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Translation, we can mobilize the Houthis at any time and interrupt that strait if you somehow gain control over the Strait of Hormuz again. By the way, they have not done that. That's a card up their sleeve, and they're likely waiting to use it if needed. So, he goes on to say, oil is not just numbers on a screen. It must move through real choke points. And with the U.S. summer travel coming, obviously more people traveling, demand on energy will rise unless Americans cancel their vacation. So in essence, what he's trying to say is don't brag about paper market power when Iran can pressure the real oil routes. And then this is kind of a picture signifying what he meant in that tweet. So you can take a look at that. This is the Iranian side. It's actually physical. It's geographical. The Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the pipelines that they could destroy if they actually wanted to, if Trump prompted them to do that by destroying their oil infrastructure or their power plants, which he has now hurled that threat 2 times on Truth Social. And then the United States can release reserves, and they can maybe sell temporarily to countries that will have to travel a much greater distance for the oil, which is not going to work out long term. And then high prices reduce consumption. Some already occurred. So demand destruction pretty much. And that's partly played. So a lot of factors here, but he's kind of painting the picture that so long as this continues, it's not that bad for us. It's way worse for you, and we'll make sure you feel it. That's what the parliament speaker said about 7 hours ago on X. And so hopefully the situation regarding Abbas Araghchi in Russia, Trump in the Situation Room, their new stipulation that they'll open up the strait if there's temporary peace guaranteed that leads into an eventual peace deal, let's hope that all actually comes to fruition, because he's not wrong here. And you all feel it at the pumps already. But, yeah, what are we arguing in the chat? Guys, can we grow up? Muslims and Christians fighting again? Can't help you guys. Are we going to continue to be goys? Goyim? The goyim, they're so stupid. Anyways, guys, that's pretty much the long and short of the news of what's happened today. We maintained 1,700 viewers the entire time. God bless all of you guys. That's amazing. Shows me that you guys actually enjoyed the stream. You enjoyed my commentary. Very delighted to see that, and tons of positive reactions in the chat and reception. So we will keep this train going. I'm going to start the work week, unfortunately. So, you know, I won't be around for the beginning of the week, but unless there's some breaking news, and that can always happen. But I'll be back on Wednesday, likely Wednesday. My goal is to always stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I kind of typically miss one of those days, I'll be honest. So about 4-ish days a week. And my brother is actually about to go live right now. Hello, alert. Myron is about to go live right now. I guess he got some sleep. So I'm going to get the link. Let's wait till he starts his live, and we're going to send all of you guys over there. W's in the chat. So hang on. Don't go anywhere. But yeah, a little bit of a shorter stream. Somebody said this nigga already ended the stream. Yeah, hey, I got a job. I'm in the Matrix. I can't stream for like 7-8 hours. Don't worry. If the day ever comes where I don't have to work, well then, you know, I can go for 7-8 hours. Pause. But you know, unfortunately, got to get some rest. Yo, I'll stream. Yo, I get like, I'm the kind of person, I'm like, oh, I'm good. I don't need sleep, right? I'm the kind of person who believes, yeah, you know, 2-3 hours of sleep, coffee, back in the game, right? And I swear to God, the biggest issue I have when I don't get sleep, I am so irritable. God forbid you catch me on a night where I don't get sleep. Bro, I'm like so angry at everything. I'll see an innocent person walking and I'll be like, what the fuck is wrong with that person? And I'll catch myself like, goodness, what is wrong with me? It's like I get so evil. This sinister energy enters me when I don't get sleep. So that's why I'm getting off, so I can be a good functioning member of society tomorrow. Oh, while you guys are here, please save this to your watch later. Please, okay? This is the YouTube channel. Shout out to my guy Halimi for the thumbnails and the videos. He's editing them. Riyadh explains the true roots of Islamic terrorism. I go into all the lore of Osama bin Laden, his origins, Al-Qaeda, how it started, its secular motivations opposed to its alleged religious motivations, and what the U.S. had lied about. Colin Powell in a statement to Palestine, the Secretary of State under George Bush, all of this good stuff. A lot of it that I pulled out of Scott Horton's book and other sources. So it's not too long of a watch. It's 17 minutes, very quick video. You can speed it up to 1.25. Take a listen to it. I think it's very informational. It's pretty straightforward, but I think a lot of you guys would benefit from watching it. So go check that video out. Smash the like button on this stream. Smash the like button on my previous stream as well. Honestly, I would send you guys to my brother's YouTube, but I'm going to just send you over to his Kick instead. He is now live, and I'm going to send you the link, or I'm going to put the link in the chat right now. If you hate Kick, I get it. You could just jump over to his YouTube stream. But I'm going to drop his Kick link. So that's his Kick right there. I pinned it. Head over there. Say W Big Bro. We love Myron. We love Myron Gaines. W, big bro. Love all you guys. Thank you so much for the love. Don't forget to follow my clips page on Instagram. Tia Kiki just put it in the chat. Thank you so much, Tia. It is Riyadh Pilled. And let me make sure I don't have any remaining super chats before I hop off here. I think I have one more, so don't worry. I'm not going to miss it. I got a couple more. Lambo4905 says, you're doing a great job with the stream, bro. W, Pokefright. Thank you so much, Lambo. Pokefright says, W bros with the super chats and YouTube monetization. Is it enough for you to quit your normie job? Got to keep some stability. Ivan Leo 7908. Thank you, Pokefright, though. Ivan Leo 7908 just drove from Vegas to Homestead in the last 5 days. Thank you to you and your bro for keeping the drive interesting. And hey, Ivan, God bless you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's what I want. You know, I want people to listen to the stream, do their laundry, listen to the stream, doing dishes, doing chores, just have me playing in the background, or just full on, you know, give your undivided attention. But that's, you know, that's the beauty of these kinds of streams where I'm just yapping. You can listen, get the news. There's a little bit of a comedic effect to it, and I make it a little bit more digestible than watching a stupid Fox News reporter give you some Hasbara spin or propaganda spin on the news. So God bless all of you guys. That's why I do this. And until next time, jump over to Myron's stream on Kick, and I will see you guys on likely Wednesday, if not maybe sooner if the news is pressing enough. God bless, guys. Have a good night.